We're inside the playing hall here, the second and final day of our title match. The 2023 Champions Chess Tour will finally come to an end after 8 amazing days in Toronto. And boy, was it amazing. We had youthful rising stars show up, ready to battle. But ultimately, even the superstars were sent home by 2 men. They were the best through the early stages, and they remain the best here in rapid chess. They are Wesley So and Magnus Carlsen. Does Wesley So do what he's already done, win a tiebreaker and forced dramatic Armageddon? Or does the GOAT, Magnus Carlsen, win in a clean sweep? It all comes down to today. This is the final moments of the 2023 Champions Chess Tour, and it begins right now.
You've heard the sayings, the road less traveled, rubber meets the road, I'm on the road to nowhere. That need to get up and go, to just shut up and drive to parts unknown. It's in our DNA. But this road has an end, and the beginning, well, let's throw that in reverse.
It's over. We have a winner, Magnus Carlsen.
What has this kid got in store? He might
A one-move checkmate.
There's been curves, hills, corners, and even a breakdown or two.
The game is over.
That's a wrap.
We see a reaction. Magnus is
Magnus, mouse slipped.
Oh my gosh, look at Jordan's face.
Some have pulled over, but some
What is he doing?
slammed that foot to the floor and just kept going.
Any second now, Hikaru Nakamura is the winner. Nodirbek Abdusattorov, Maxime, Vachier-Lagrave, the Frenchman. He wins the AI Cup.
After 6 stops along the way, it's time for the greatest proving ground in online chess to drop that final pin in the GPS. Destination, Toronto, Canada. 8 players from all 4 corners of the globe descend on the Queen City with one goal: to prove who the one true king of online chess really is.
I think this is the strongest final there's ever been.
I know that it will not be easy.
It's nice to play in top tournament.
Magnus will want revenge. It's my last tournament of the year. I'm a bit desperate to end it well.
Having the opportunity to play against the best players in the world, it's always a challenge, and I enjoy it.
It's going to be a very close fight. It's going to be very exciting.
Live from Toronto, Canada, this is the 2023 Champions Chess Tour Finals, and it starts now.
We are live from Toronto, Canada, taking a look, maybe the final look, at the very, very beautiful Queen City. The CN Tower looks overall. What a shot there. I don't know if it was sunrise or sunset, but I'm into it. And we are here in the playing hall. It is the final day. No matter what happens, it all comes down to this. Danny Wrench, Canty, Levy Rosman. This is it, guys. Levy, you brought your best suit.
I did.
I guess we're going out after this.
We're going out after this. We got the UFC event after this. I just had to channel my inner Bruce Buffer. That's trademark. I don't want to do it, so I don't. But
That's true.
I'm so excited.
That's the one thing you can't say. But Canty, you ready for this?
I'm ready for this, man. It's the last day, guys. We got to get some champions, or champions going to be crowned today. It's a lot of money on the line, Danny. Is coming out of your pocket, or is that that's 200,000, Danny?
Culmination.
That's a lot.
This is the culmination of the whole calendar year of events. This is it.
I love that you said that, because it really is. This is more than just what we've been through here over 8 days. This is the culmination of so many amazing events, so much hard work by so many players. It all comes down to these 2 guys. We know we have a lot to break down when it comes to their chess.
Yeah, 100%. I'm ready for it, you know?
I'm ready for
Magnus
it. You're ready for
Wesley.
it.
Y'all ready at home?
All right, let's remind everybody of how we got here. It was an amazing semifinals yesterday. The bracket will remind you of, as I said, the semifinals between So and Abdusattorov and Carlsen Caruana, but that wasn't yesterday. Yesterday was the first day of the title match. Magnus Carlsen got it done in regulation. We didn't even need Armageddon. But if you look in that upper left corner, a reminder, Wesley So has been here before. It was the exact same score. Hey, it's rhyme time, and he refused to walk out that door. I'm continuing to see whether we can keep this going, because Wesley So is going to have to keep it going here if we're still going to be here for a very, very long day. So, all right, let's remind you of what we saw on day 7. You see the scoreboard, but what were the highlights? Take it away.
Day 1 of the CCT title match gave us a wild start with the extremely rare 1b3 and nearly perfect chess. Despite the offbeat first move, Wesley maintained an equal game throughout, ending in a draw. Both players were incredibly precise, with nearly 99% accuracy each. The second game, they outdid themselves, this time playing over 99% accuracy, also ending in a draw. Game 3 was a wild back and forth that seemed to trend towards a drawn rook endgame. Somehow, Magnus managed to conjure his famous endgame magic, and a mistake from Wesley with 4 seconds on the clock allowed Magnus to push his f-pawn to decide the game.
White's rook is keeping that black b-pawn under lock and key, and why has he allowed the black pawn to run? His king could have stepped across.
The final game of the set was a must-win for Wesley, and he had the black pieces. Despite Wesley's best efforts to create a dynamic position with attacking chances, Magnus was simply too solid, never conceding any significant edge. Wesley's extra pawn was not enough as the game simplified down to a draw with bishops and pawns on the board. Can Wesley come back from a one-set deficit against Magnus?
It was dramatic. It was dramatic. You see a slightly dejected there, an apprehensive Wesley So, according to Magnus Carlsen.
Mm-hmm. No, that's exactly what happened. It really felt like Wesley just sort of, he wanted a very slow start to the match. Magnus created a little bit of imbalance in that third game.
You called it Sicilian.
Yeah, and it was just like, it was just a tiny bit in one direction. One guy had a slight chance, and that was the entire match. That's a summary of yesterday's matchup. So
that was the difference in the match. It wasn't very different between these two guys. You see less than a couple accuracy points, over 98% shenanigans, but that's what it takes to beat a guy who's playing 96% plus. And you saw what Wesley did there in terms of accuracy, but we also saw what Magnus said about what it takes to beat the guy. He said, sometimes I gotta hustle my way to a victory. What does that actually mean on the chessboard?
Yeah, not even sometimes. I think he said that's how I've beaten Wesley over the course of my career. I hustle him. At the lower elo, hustling is like, look, the fans at home know you're down a queen, it's not over.
Flag!
Never resign. You could beat somebody on time, you could bribe somebody, maybe someone's internet disconnects, you beat somebody down 2 queens. Let me show you what hustling means at the elite grandmaster level. This is from game 3, the rook endgame yesterday between Magnus and Wesley. Magnus with the black pieces, 4 pawns versus 3. We just do the math, you think black is better. Well, at this moment, Wesley started walking with his king to the right side, and he was going after Magnus's h-pawn while his pawns were falling. Magnus grabbed the pawn on b4, and then Wesley lined up the rook on b7 to both cut off black's king and target the pawn on b5 and f7. Despite being 2 pawns down, this is still a draw. You put Magnus here with the white pieces, he's probably going to save the day, right? Like, he's probably just going to make a draw. But Wesley took the pawn on h5, and then a couple of moves later, we can roll the footage until the move f5. And Wesley had to go back with his king to g5 here. That was what he had to do. It was one tiny decision with less than 10 seconds on the clock. But instead of that, he got into a race, and he is not going to stop both of Magnus's pawns. Just keep it rolling. You notice Magnus's pawns rolling, the b and f pawns all the way down the board, and ultimately that is what was decisive. Let's keep going. You see Wesley pushes his pawn, f2, rook b8, and Wesley had to resign because his pawns are just not as fast. His pawn, I should say, his 1 pawn. Magnus's 2 pawns are much faster. And that's what Magnus calls hustling, but it's what we call magic.
Yeah.
All right? Because he just takes that tiny microscopic moment in a game and he takes advantage of his opponent's misstep. And that's why that match yesterday was that close, and that's how Magnus got it done.
We like to call that Magnus doing Magnus things. Let's see what it looks like on paper. Canty, break it down for us, Magnus doing Magnus things, when we talk about what he's done here in Toronto.
Yeah, I mean, look at this. Well, first off, this stat is looking the same, as I mentioned before, as Wesley's. 5-1 overall. I mean, he lost to Wesley and vice versa. I mean, Wesley lost to Magnus. Magnus lost to Wesley. Like 8 brilliancies, right? Second most tied with Wesley, so, right? And 93.9, 5 highest in the CCT Finals for the accuracy.
Yep.
The man is a machine. Half man, half something else.
But there's one loss there in Armageddon.
That is.
That 5-1 record was
100%.
for a reason. So for fans tuning in and doing the obligatory thing, I got to see Magnus win another title. Not so fast.
Right.
One man has stopped him so far. Can Wesley So do it again?
Well, don't disrespect him. It's Flexly So.
Flexly
Serrano Day.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Now, at the same time, of course, Flexly So Solid is what we call him these days. But beforehand, he actually was a very aggressive player. In fact, as we see in this game that he played with Magnus here, that infamous game where he sacked a piece, guys. Woo-wee, started right here. He said, I'm going knight G5, and we live. He hit that boy with a nasty one, very mean. This is the Wesley we remember before he became Wesley So Solid. Now, knight G5, after ace takes G5, there's bishop takes G5, right? So he sacked a piece here. Magnus just like, whoa, he just sacked a piece on me, my guy. Let me chill, let me relax, right? Then, okay, let's fast forward here. After knight E5 happens, we follow up queen F2, there we go, got the moves, knight D7, and then E5, this is another one, like he sacked a piece, then he sacks a pawn. Who is this? You would never think this was Wesley So at all. And then after pawn takes pawn, the knight comes in to E4, after knight E4, queen B6, and then queen H4 check, right, from Wesley, allowing knight H5, because we're going to take on F6 first, so knight H5 happened for Magnus. After knight H5, we need to get our piece back, hence the move G4 from Wesley here. G4 pins the knight. Right now, we were able to get a piece sacrifice, and we got our piece back, and put black under some pressure here, where, and let's fast forward, as we see that Magnus had to sacrifice his queen, in fact, and it was actually forced. There was one line that he could have chosen, but it was hard to see that. And after knight takes, rook takes, bishop takes was better, but he had to sacrifice his queen, which allowed Wesley to go on and win this game right here. So Flexly So, if he has a game like this, or something, maybe attack Magnus, like he said before, we may have some different chances.
A game like this, a game like that, that's what a lot of people are hoping for. I think even Magnus Carlsen fans are secretly hoping for that Wesley So to show up today, right? And he's going to have to if he wants the larger piece of what's at stake. We don't talk about it a lot, but this is also one of the richest tournaments that any of these guys will play in. This is a $500,000 on the line.
We got a lot of money. That's the flex here. We got a lot of money. We're giving out a lot of money. That's what we're doing.
It's $200,000 for first place. Obviously, second is a six-figure sum as well. Not a bad payday, but the truth is that's double your money, double the fun. Can Wesley show up? I could use some double mint gum after this. I've had a lot of coffee. I'm just saying that they are not a sponsor of this show. But all right, it's time for us to check in with someone who is a part of this show. Her name is Kaya, and she's waiting just outside.
Hey, Danny. Yep, I'm out here in the lounge pouring myself some energy before a big day. Also looking for the players. They should arrive very shortly, hoping to get a question in with both Magnus and Wesley before it all kicks off. And I've actually been doing some detective work over the last 20 hours. Been trying to figure out what the players are doing before the final day of the CCT Finals. And, well, I almost feel like I should have a tobacco pipe and magnifying glass because I've been looking for them everywhere. And here's what I found out. So Magnus spent an hour at the fan zone yesterday having some pizza, hanging out with people. He came back to the hotel. I saw him going into the elevator. And since he's not been spotted, not at the restaurant for breakfast, not for dinner, he's not been spotted in the lobby, he's not been at the gym, and the same is for Wesley So. And I think that means the two players have been in their rooms, in their hotel rooms. They've been having room service and probably just preparing for this very final day, the action that will take place here today. So it's going to be exciting. I'm looking forward to this day a lot. We'll have some coffee, but in a few hours, Danny, we'll switch this up with some champagne.
We will have champagne, as you're saying, Kaya, at the end of the day, because no matter what happens, whether it's a long one or a short one, we are going to have a winner. We are going to crown our 2023 Champions Chess Tour champion. And all right, but before we do that, guys, I know that people are wondering how long will this day be? Let's remind them that Wesley So was the man to beat a few years ago in Oslo. That was the kind of Wesley So that a lot of people would like to see, the kind of Wesley So that we know is capable of this. He won the World Fischer Random Championship. Shout out to Sopako and Yaz. Look at that. I looked a little younger in that. Man, I have aged over the stressful chess boom. Oh my God, we got to talk about that. But there you go. Here were the players with the flowers. Wesley was all smiles. Magnus Carlsen was not all smiles, and he didn't hide it. He wanted to win this event, make no mistake. And, I caught up with Magnus a little bit yesterday, walking home from the fan zone. I want to go back to the comments you guys have both made about Wesley already, which is Magnus said, I hustle him because he doesn't really take his chances. But when he does, you see what he's capable of in Armageddon. And Magnus was actually talking about the fourth game they had where Wesley almost won with black. It wasn't a huge advantage, but at some point, Wesley was doing the things that you expect him to do. And Magnus said, he's like, he doesn't play chess like that often. He's got to do it today.
Oh, yeah, he has absolutely no choice. This is basically actually a gentleman who's fighting later today, Leon Edwards, in his second fight against Kamaru Usman. It was round 5, and he's lost the first 4 rounds. I mean, maybe he won round 1, and then he was down 3-1. Like, Wesley doesn't have a choice. He's got to throw a head kick, and he's got to go for the knockout. He has to win the second set, and then he's got to force a tiebreak. He can't play. That graphic that we showed was great, 98% versus 96.4. And honestly, the brilliancy Wesley was credited with was like one of those, you know, it was like a, they made no brilliancies and no blunders as far as I'm concerned. It was a really, really, really close day. Wesley can't have that again, because if they have that type of day, Magnus is probably going to win. Yep. We need to see a checkmate on the board today, or it's gonna be an early night.
That's actually correct. In fact, one thing Magnus said, I remember this from a YouTube video or something that Magnus said. He was like, yeah, a lot of players actually are as skilled as I am. It's just the confidence, the mental part. As we saw yesterday, in fact, even in some of the games that we saw from Wesley, you could just tell the confidence wasn't there. It wasn't the Wesley that we saw before. You could see him dejected. You could see some nerves through how his body language was telling us. So having a little bit more confidence, if he's able to bring that today, maybe we'll have a different Wesley.
You could see the nerves. The fans want to see more than that from Wesley. And speaking of the fan zone is bumping. Ooh. I think the kids say things like that.
They do.
Yeah, you know, it's lit. It sounds cool. But all right, we're going to be checking in with it throughout the day. But we caught up with many of them yesterday, asked them how they were enjoying it, who they had in the match, and other questions. Enjoy this take from our live fan zone.
I mean, this is just the place to be in Toronto today. Like, walking in here, you walk past grandmasters, you walk past the chess fans standing together with them. It is so cool to be here.
Between Magnus and Wesley, so who do you think is going to win?
Okay, I'll probably play it safe. I'll say Magnus, but I don't think it'll be easy for him.
Oh, I don't know. Magnus, maybe?
Magnus.
Magnus?
Yeah.
I think Magnus, but in Armageddon, something pretty close.
Magnus, but I love Wesley too.
Yeah, good answer.
I'm going to go with Wesley So. I think Wesley gets like a plus 100 Toronto buff to his elo, and I think that's going to be enough to overtake Magnus.
Team Wesley So all day long.
Anything can happen in chess, you know, like, we'll see who can beat the GOAT here.
Yeah, I think Wesley's very cold-blooded. Let's see what happens.
First of all, Dennis, curious, how's your experience been in Canada?
Very happy to be here.
Is it your first time in North America, US, or Canada?
Yes, it's mine.
Yeah.
All right, we can't end the day without giving a shout out to the Chess Bras here for their thing. Of course, Magnus came in, he's still here. The fans are nuts. This is literally like a dream come true for chess, and the party's just beginning. So we're gonna go have a good time. Next time there's a chance to join us at a fan zone, hope you take us up on it. Peace.
There are a bunch of fans who took us up on it. In fact, I hear the line was long out the door because people were showing up, maybe just to test that theory that it was sold out. People were showing up who didn't have tickets, and I've been told a lot of them had to be sent away because that thing actually did sell out. And I physically visited yesterday. Let me just say it was uncomfortable physically given how many human beings were stacked up against other human beings. So I say that not in like a bad way. I'm saying like it.
Really roundabout compliment, but yeah.
It was a legit.
You all made Danny uncomfortable.
You made me extremely uncomfortable.
A fan zone.
That's right. But all right, no, it's a ton of fun, and we'll probably be back there today. We see Amon and Eric already hamming it up, having fun with the fans. That is a live shot right now. And speaking of fun, we know they're going to have fun. Of course. At some point here, we're going to get down to the serious business, but you guys threw down right here and had some fun.
Yeah, we did.
I was there, hiding in the dark, watching it, and let me just say, things got spicy between these two guys.
It's crazy.
Oh my God. I don't feel it yet because there's so much spice already in my mouth.
Turn the thermostat up.
Please, no milk. No milk.
No f***ing milk, James.
I'm gonna go to the ambulance.
What's up, everyone? Chess is hard as it is, but we're about to make it even harder by playing chili chess. For every type of piece we capture, we are gonna eat a chip with some hot sauce on it, starting with the pawns, knights, bishops, and rooks, a queen, and then the loser of the game is gonna eat this drenched chip over here. Well, I'm here with soon-to-be international master and then grandmaster James Canty III. How you doing, man?
I'm feeling good, man. Thank you. Oh, sorry. My bad. Yeah. I got a high spice tolerance, so I think you're probably pretty good with yours, too. Not at all.
No, I'm ready though.
I'm ready, man. What's the time control? What are we playing?
3 minutes. Every time we hit the clock, we get an extra 2 seconds.
Ready to go?
Yeah. Here we go.
And here we go.
Oh man, we battled a lot in the. It's like you letting me take it, bro. We get
You must be hungry, bro.
I'm too scared to capture.
Take it, bro.
No, because then we have to eat the.
You know what? Now you gotta eat the freaking chip.
All so big.
Yes.
Oh man. Oh. It feels like I'm inhaling a barbecue. I hate that one.
That's pretty good.
God. That is the official.
Your turn, buddy. Beautiful.
That one's weird, man. It's like citrusy, but like
correct.
Kind of tastes like.
You know what? That's exactly what it would taste like. Right.
Okay. What would Magnus play?
Bishop a6.
I don't think he would play that move, you know.
I mean, you didn't say what time control. Pretty good, big dog. 4.
Kenny, if I'm big dog, what are you?
Bigger dog. Yeah,
now I have to take.
Take the knight.
Yeah.
Yes, he took the knight. Now what do I take with?
Chip. That's what you got to do.
Oh, eat a freaking chip. Ooh, that's a lot on there. Ooh, that's hitting different. You right. Okay.
Oh. I'm rolling up mine. We got the end game of the chips. This is
hey, which one do I want? Okay. None of you back.
I like how silent psychological battle. Nobody's drank milk yet.
Right.
We're like, okay. All right. Word looks different when you high on spice.
Oh man, I'm hitting different. Oh, shit's kind of hot to be chilling like that. Oh, it's definitely getting hot in this room, guys. You didn't turn the thermostat up?
Oh, I took a pawn, mister.
Oh, you took a pawn. You did. Damn, bro, you catching everything.
Oh!
Let's check.
Oh my God, I lost on time. No!
Oh, that's not
Oh my God.
There you go. Look.
Can we get that on camera? Look how much sauce.
Taya did that. She don't care about GothamChess. You see that, right?
Goodness.
Yep.
You really want to split this with me?
I will, bro. I'll do it for you, bro. Sure. It's for you, man. You know what I'm saying? I got you, big dog. You ready for this, chat? You know. Okay, so the problem is, I don't feel it yet because there's so much spice already in my mouth. So it's probably gonna be like how Magnus said, creeps up on you. Yep, now it's starting to creep up. I feel it. I feel it.
Oh man.
I'm gonna go to the ambulance. I'm gonna call them people right now.
On my hand. Please, no milk.
No milk.
No milk. We're doing this with no milk. No fucking milk, James. It's like 2 brothers. We in a ditch somewhere.
Yep.
Explosions all around.
No milk. We ask them, you need a Band-Aid? No, I need no milk, son. No milk. I'm gonna feel that for a few days, 2 hours.
Me, bro.
I did, bro. I did. But your brain don't work right when all the spices and stuff.
No, man. Bro, I can't feel my fingers. Same time next week?
Sure. It's a date.
You okay? Your eyes were, I know you got the dub there, flagging poor Levy over here, but your eyes, they paid the price there.
I was like, cut. Y'all didn't see that part. I was saying cut a few times, like I just, help. You know, it wasn't fun, Danny. It was very spicy.
I've never been more nervous to film anything in my life, because I'm not that good with spice.
Yeah.
And when I put that chip, the last chip in my mouth, I thought, okay, I shouldn't let it touch my tongue. I gotta like just swallow it whole. Yeah, then my throat, and then I touched my nose.
Oh,
they didn't put that. My nose was just.
I remember you touched your nose.
Yeah, and I was just like. Luckily, they made me look borderline, redeemable.
Well, you were more than borderline redeemable. Wesley wants to redeem his first day of the title match. Will he get it done? Well, what do our odds say? We've been checking in with them as the Chess.com stats team brings it to us daily. The odds are not ever in Wesley's favor right now. This is more than the Hunger Games on the board for these guys. This is a really uphill battle for Wesley. So, will he get it done? It's time for us to throw. I've come up with all the different ways I can to talk about jumping from Toronto to Oslo across the sea, and we're just gonna leave it right there. Tanya, Robert, and David, we're as excited as everyone else to watch your guys play-by-play. Take it away.
We are so pumped in the studio. The moves will be played in Toronto, but we're excited in Oslo. And we're also expecting some spicy chess to happen. The winner, $200,000 on the line. Second place goes down to $100K. So much at stake. Wesley, an uphill battle for him. David, if you were in Wesley's shoes, where is your best shot?
I think the boys out there in Toronto nailed it. He has to attack. He has to forget the nerves, forget the occasion, forget the prize money, everything. Just go for Magnus as king.
Yeah. And Magnus is one step away from his third Champions Chess Tour title. How is he feeling today? Does he want to wrap this up as quickly as possible?
Yeah, you don't want to give Wesley that hope, that confidence, because a confident Wesley So is a dangerous man. So if Magnus has the chance, you want to put it away in the second set. Do not allow it to get to a third.
Yes, because though Wesley has quite the challenge up in front of him, he has to beat Magnus not once but twice for the title. But it has been done before, Robert.
It has been done before. Wesley beat him earlier in this very event in the round-robin stage, and Maxime Vachier-Lagrave earned his spot in the Tour Finals by beating Magnus twice in the same day. That should give Wesley some hope, but Magnus, he doesn't like losing very much. I think he probably learned his lesson.
Wesley, he needs to create some of that Maxime magic one more time in this finals. On set one, it just felt, and Magnus said it himself, that Wesley was just a little bit too cautious. Is Wesley going to try to aim again to get to Armageddon, or does he take the battle head on?
I think at this point, Armageddon would be a success for Wesley, just judging by the way he was playing yesterday. But that being said, it does feel like he needs to attack at some point. Yesterday, even when he got promising positions, even in the final game, in a must-win situation, he had an advantage. It just felt like he didn't really believe. So belief is everything here. Magnus, he only really is vulnerable in those positions where his king is under fire. No more endgames, Wesley. No more kind of slow grinds. No more long, deep thinks for no reason. Save the time on the clock. Go for Magnus as king and just hope it pans out. He's got to risk it right now. It's the final chance.
Because Magnus Carlsen, we know him. He's looking for the smallest, the minutest of inaccuracy. He's smelling when his opponent isn't feeling confident, when he's not believing in himself. And that's the Wesley we saw yesterday, taking some tame decisions on the board, which gave Magnus the chance to strike when the opportunity presented itself.
You cannot make even a single mistake at times against Magnus Carlsen. And a day ago, yesterday does seem so far away, but Wesley believed in order to be the best, you have to be the best. I don't think Wesley should do that again. Maybe he learned his lesson. And Magnus, on the other hand, it's been a New Year's resolution for him. 2023 is about to end. If he wants to knock that one out, he has to play B3 today.
Will he go for the 1B3? But maybe he's not got to play for the memes right now. Wesley, so I believe that for him to get to Armageddon would be a success, make things more random. But on the path to that, if you get your opportunities, you can't afford to shy away from them.
Yeah, you definitely cannot take the easy way out this time. No point conserving energy. This is the last game of the whole tour this season. And Wesley, he does start with white as well, so he needs to show Magnus his intentions today. He cannot play as conservatively as he has been doing. This first game, I think, will tell us a lot, will tell Magnus a lot. And I think he needs to show himself that he can do it, Wesley So.
It's such a tightrope to walk on because Wesley has to take the risks when they do come. But if it backfires, it could just be championship over. Magnus gets one early win, and that makes the task almost impossible for Wesley to strike back. He is first on the table, perhaps just thinking about these early moments, the opening approach. He, of course, knows right now what his first move number one, will be.
Yeah, often you have planned out your first few moves, you've kind of predicted what your opponent's going to do, and you know exactly how you'll play the first 5-10 moves. But you just have to manifest the just consider what might happen a bit later on. Just envisage those dramatic situations. Things are getting tense. How are you going to play? How quickly are you going to react? How confidently are you going to react? So it's not just about this opening stage for Wesley. It's the mindset, the attitude, the philosophy with which he approaches this game.
He's looking confident right now. And a really good point made there by you, David, that it's the position on the board, the opening approach, and let's listen in. I thought Wesley said something there. But also, David, yesterday we witnessed both these players burn so much time on the clock. How big a factor will it be for Wesley to try and put pressure on the clock as well? And we see Magnus walking in.
When you see that man storming your way, usually you run in the other direction. Wesley has to stay seated, and he has to stay composed. So he cannot afford to get in time trouble. The games will begin soon. but it's not fun and games when you're facing Magnus Carlsen.
It's never fun, but it is a big challenge and so much at stake for these two players. Wesley So down a set, has to win this set to take it to the third and the final one for Magnus Carlsen. He is looking for his third title win in the Champions Chess Tour, and we're off.
We're off, and Wesley So back to 1b3. Surprise here. Will Magnus have prepared for this? I mean, that looks like a double bluff, Robert.
He made me eat my words. Yesterday does not seem so far away because we have a repeat. And for the second day in a row, Magnus pauses. He is trying to collect himself and determine what to play against this first move. So, Tania, are you surprised that Magnus is spending precious seconds here?
I am loving this. 1b3 after what happened yesterday, though Wesley did not get into any trouble out of the opening. It was an equal battle. And Magnus choosing a similar setup from set one, the Fianchetto that we saw. David, put yourself in Magnus's mind right now. You're facing this 1b3. We've been calling it, well, the playing for the memes opening. How are you reacting?
Well, I think Magnus, he's played so many meme-type openings throughout his own career that he'll just not be too phased, and he will, as he's shown in the game so far, just try to react in a similar vein to yesterday, where he just established a very solid position, no real weaknesses, and was able to later equalize. Here, play is transposing back towards more conventional, more traditional waters. White is ready to Fianchetto both bishops, so both bishops on the longest possible diagonals for White. Magnus has got one of his own, but it will be a fight for those central squares. So Magnus now just mulling over how to react. I think he just wants solidity, Magnus Carlsen. He doesn't want to punish Wesley for this opening choice.
And a good change by Wesley from a day ago, because now he's Fianchettoing his light square bishop first. Yesterday, Magnus was actually able to play b6 and bishop b7 to get his light square bishop on the board's longest diagonal. So Wesley is playing a slightly different move order, which has different consequences. There are always nuances in every single turn. And you see that Magnus, he's adopting more of a King's Indian style, playing in the center of the board.
And Wesley did adopt the 1b3 against Nodirbek as well. It worked to perfection in that one. It was a miniature by Wesley. We saw him play the same opening in set one against Magnus. That ended in a draw, but no one, I think very few, were actually expecting a repeat of that in set two as well. So Wesley getting the mind games going there. And as Robert said, for the light squared bishop that Magnus has, it's impossible to Fianchetto it on b7 like it happened yesterday. So looking at the other diagonal, he pushes the pawn in front of the queen. White looking to expand in the center here?
At some point, I believe so. But as soon as you expand to the center, you restrict the scope of your bishops, because pawns, you want them in the center. And they always say a bad bishop usually defends a good pawn. So you can happily push forward in the center. And we see that Wesley, he takes a calmer approach, a little bit of a quieter approach. David, does that surprise you at all?
Very much so. And we saw Magnus just look away from the board briefly after that move. A slight frown before he goes back to that poker face, Magnus Carlsen. But this one, again, it feels a bit indecisive. I think Wesley's just trying to stay flexible, but it does allow Magnus to build in the center. Magnus has a bit more space in the middle of the board right now with Black's pawn formation. Wesley, he's just put his knight on a really, really flexible square. And watch out for White's pawns. White's D pawn in the center, White's F pawn. They can challenge the head of Black's pawn chain. So I like the approach from Wesley So. It feels like he's already kind of trying to force himself into this mindset of a must-win situation. But it is a bit provocative. It is a bit risky. It is a full-blooded fight now where having the advantage of the white pieces, having that extra first move doesn't really count for too much. So I think reasons to be happy for both sides. It's a real fight. But Wesley, he's just trying to play chess, as we say.
And with the location of his knight's development in front of the king, as you were highlighting, David, that White has a choice of which pawn to push to challenge for the center. I think the F pawn will go forward, especially once White castles. And we see Magnus, he's shaking his head. He's like, all right, not so bad. That looks okay. But he needs to figure out a plan, because what Wesley is doing is he's mixing things up, and he's also securing a lead on the clock. And we've seen in most games, the player that has the advantage in terms of how much time they have left, that's usually paid dividends for them.
And Magnus preempts the opening up of the E line, places his rook on the E file, continues with development, also keeping the flexibility for the queenside pieces to come out, where you want to place them, because we've been talking about that light squared bishop that Wesley has on G2. You often want to blunt that with the C pawn moving one step ahead, C6 to make sure that the diagonal remains blocked. The big questions will happen in this position once Wesley strikes with the F pawn forward with F4. If he delays that too much, Magnus can start thinking about breaking in the center with d5 himself.
Yeah, Magnus is at least hinting kind of towards that plan. And it does feel like Black's maybe more ready for action to happen than White right now. I must admit, I'm surprised Wesley so hasn't castled his king, but he might be fearing your move there, Tanya, Black's pawn coming to d5. So things are starting to get a bit more concrete. It's not just about where the pieces are going, it's also about specific plans. If I start my plan, how does Black react? And kind of what are the consequences of those moves? And Wesley now in the tank. I think this is a good moment to pause. We will see a flurry of moves surely over the next few turns, but yeah, Wesley, so he definitely feels like he's come swinging, come fighting in these early stages so far.
Really fun start and promises to be a spicy game one of set two. And earlier we saw Levy and James in their chilly battle. David, you had one against Magnus. How hot did that get?
Yeah, that was one of the worst days of my life, I've got to say, Tanya. About 2 years ago on I think, season 1 of the Champions Chess Tour, I did have this chilly match against Magnus, and he loves spicy food. I hate spicy food. I just can't handle it at all. And he forced the queens off really on. He was literally kind of chasing my queen around the board, forcing me to trade them off, just so I had to eat the spiciest kind of punishment there. And yeah, he took me down.
How many days in a row did you have the sweats?
It was a few. I downed a few pints of milk literally within minutes because my mouth was on fire. And yeah, that's the problem with Magnus. He's good at chess. He's good at eating spicy food. He's good at everything.
Is there video of this out there? Like, can I go watch this during the break?
Maybe on YouTube.
So everybody at home, all of you out there, go find that Chili Chess Challenge between David Howell and Magnus Carlsen and let me know what happened, because I have to do this show. I can't watch it just yet.
Magnus Carlsen so competitive regardless of the situation and playing some mind games in Chili Chess as well. And we see some upcoming mind games in this one about central breaks in this position. We were discussing this move earlier, so Magnus really getting ready for d5.
He's getting ready to heat things up, to make it spicy, as you said, Tanya. And I think he's ready for that. He's always ready for play to become a bit fiery. Wesley So, meanwhile, yet to make a decision again. Burning quite a lot of time on the clock now. And this might be the moment to strike in the center for Wesley with one of those pawn pushes we've been talking about, whether it be the white D pawn in front of the white queen, whether it's the white F pawn. Because if you do castle, Black expands in the center, and I can't envisage White ever getting any opening advantage there. If anything, White might have to be careful to hold the balance.
I'm with you, and I think that if Wesley wants to strike in the center with his own D-pawn, that Magnus is not going to initiate any trades. I do believe that trading in the center would only help White's cause, so he would thrust his E-pawn forward and then create a pawn chain towards the center. And when you have a pawn chain, you want to attack in the direction of your pawn chain. So if Black has a pawn chain from the queen side heading towards the center, then you want to go and aim towards the king side. And for White, if he pushes this pawn to d4, his pawn chain is going in the other direction. It's going towards the center from f2 to d4. You want to play on the queen side. So look at the direction of your pawn chain. That should indicate where you're heading, where your pieces should go.
Really instructive there, Robert. And we're on move 8. We're already talking about pawn breaks, and we have a very, very different decision by Wesley on the board. It's not d4, it's not f4, it's the pawn that we haven't been talking about. It's moved twice up the board. He's not fighting for his own breaks, but he's fighting against Magnus's break of d5.
Yeah, I think this is a good move, actually, a good decision in practical terms. He's made Magnus's plans less clear now by blocking up the center, but in the back of his mind, Wesley will be kicking himself. He'll be saying, why didn't I put this pawn on e4 a few moves ago? Stepping one square with a pawn and then 2-3 moves later pushing it again is a clear waste of a tempo. And in chess, it's all about time. It's all about saving moves. You've simply wasted one move, and will that come back to haunt you? It's unclear. But Wesley may be just kind of annoyed at his own indecision earlier.
And now that the light square bishop for White, that diagonal is closed down, Magnus can play for this b5 pawn push because his rook in the corner is safe thanks to the placement of the e4 pawn. So a6 is a move played to expand on the queen side for Magnus. If Wesley plays pawn a4 up 2 squares to stop that b5 push, then Magnus will push the a pawn a second time in a row. And this is a bit high level. This is what Magnus Carlsen does best, is he forces his opponent to make a hole in the position, create a weakness, and he will then exploit it.
And he's forcing Wesley to burn time on the clock as well. We're still in the early stage of the game, and of course the critical moments will arise later, for which these seconds, these minutes are super important on the board. Now, it's move number 9. We've seen Wesley slow down the last 2 moves. Is it fair to call these pawn moves, these committal moves that he's making with white, critical decisions?
Yes and no. Pawn pushers, they always kind of define the outline, the skeleton of any position. So it's always critical when to push them, when to just hold the line, when to when to stay or kind of trade off, basically, which Wesley has a dilemma here after this b5 pawn push. But then again, it feels like the critical moments are ahead. It feels like all the pieces are still on the board. The tactics are still miles off. So you ideally want to save a bit of time. Yes, these pawn pushes are worth contemplating. They're worth investing 20, 30 seconds maximum. But he's spending much more than that. It's minutes on every move. And right now, Robert, your move on the board, this pawn to b5 push, what should Wesley be doing? It's tough. It's not easy, not instinctive.
Striking in the center now with pawn to d4. It feels like you lost a tempo because white did push the pawn to e3, only then to play e4. And these tempi in the opening stage, that's what gives white the first move advantage. So if you're losing that first move because you've moved a piece twice, that will help black at minimum equalize. And Wesley plays a3. So he's stopping black from pushing the pawn any further, but he's playing on the flank, so still no central decisions on this board. And I feel like Magnus, he can continue his development in a very natural way. There's no pressure in this position.
Yeah, was he closing his eyes there, Wesley? So I'm not sure whether that's meditation or whether that's just like, oof, I'm playing moves I really don't want to be playing right now. Because a3 feels a bit loose, feels a bit weak. It's reacting to the opponent rather than dictating the pace himself. And it's Magnus now who can start gaining time. I'm expecting his bishop to come out. No, he brings his knight out instead. And yeah, it feels like actually black here, because white's wasted a move early in the opening by pushing pawn twice, black is essentially playing an opening that white would be wanting to play. And yeah, I think psychologically advantage Magnus right now.
A good outcome from the opening by Magnus. We've got reinforcements coming in from Toronto as Levy is with Fabi to break this down for us. Guys, to us it feels like very guarded play by Wesley so far. What do you think?
Thanks, Tanya. Yeah, Fabi, what is your impression of the opening? First of all, Wesley going back to b3, and second of all, Wesley playing whatever this is.
Yeah, well, when you play b3, you're sort of accepting an element of randomness because you don't know what type of position you're going to get. Like we see here, it's a kind of standard sort of thing you could get in the English King's Indian setup for black. Neither side has the advantage for sure, but I would recommend if someone wants to try to beat Magnus in a match to put maximum pressure on, and this is really not the ideal way to do it. I mean, it's a very comfortable position for black, so I'm not sure if the opening approach is the best one, but you know, it's anyway. These games will come down to who's playing better. It's usually not coming down to the opening.
Let me just follow up on that. This position that we have on the screen, do you think this is a conscious decision by Wesley over the last 24 hours to go, yeah, I think this is my best chance? Or is this a result of overthinking and going, no, d4, or maybe e4, or maybe and just going to this as a last resort?
Well, Wesley is a bit of a mystery to me. As a chess player, as a person as well, he's a little bit of a mystery. He's very much a player who thrives on positive emotions. And maybe he feels like playing b3 and having a bit of fun is the way to get those positive emotions. I don't think it's a strategic choice in terms of this is the best way to get an advantage against Magnus. Because the best way to do that is definitely to put pressure in the most direct way possible. And then Magnus, generally speaking, he never shies away from a fight. So this is what happened in our match. I was welcoming the fight, and he was also welcoming the fight, and we got very complicated positions because that's what we both wanted. While here, it's kind of a slow approach to the opening. It's definitely not how I would approach the match. I wouldn't do this. I'm not saying it's a bad approach, but yeah, never in a million years would I think this is the best way to win the match.
When's the last time you played b3 with white?
I mean, probably a few days ago online.
Okay, but in one of these, Magnus, Wesley, Hikaru,
Yeah, I've never gotten the b3 hype, so I have never really played it in a serious game.
Have you played in a classical game ever?
Not as far as I know. Maybe a long time ago, but
wow.
It's I like to experiment, but I feel like b3 isn't really the way to get an exciting position if you want to experiment. On the other hand, a lot of people have put in serious theoretical work into b3. The theory really expanded and kind of exploded at some point a few years ago. probably because people got bored or just disillusioned with trying to fight against the main like defenses in E4 and D4. So they thought, okay, at least I'll get a fresh position. I'll analyze it. I'll know it better than my opponent, and we'll get a game. And the thing is that usually people were playing like B3, E5 when sometimes things get exciting.
Yeah.
But if people just play like B3, B6, then you actually just get a boring position. Or B3, G6, things like that. If black tries to get ambitious, then you really have a fight on your hands.
Well, speaking of ambition, I guess we have technically that was the first capture of the game. Magnus just took on C4. A lot of Wesley repositioning the rook to B1 where the knight used to stand, and then the bishop into the corner where the rook used to be. I can't quite read what the plan is. Is the plan to just kind of wave a red flag in front of a charging bull and sort of bring Magnus to him? Like how? Okay, he's taking back with the B pawn.
I think
what
this
can
is
we
just
expect?
a bad decision. I'm actually shocked by BC4. Like DC4, okay, you get an unbalanced position. You try to play Queen C2, Rook D1, and B4 eventually, and then B5 and try to get the D5 square. This is just worse because after the trade on B1, or you can even not trade, you can play Bishop B6. You never get D4 because C4 is so weak. So the knight on C5 is an eternal outpost pretty much. You have a worse structure because you have C4, D3, E4 instead of C6, D6, E5. So D6 is not a weakness. D3 is okay. He can play Bishop B6 now. Queen C7, Rook B8. He follows up like that. Like you're never improving this. It's just a worse position, just like a very, very sad position for white. While if he had taken DC, maybe his worry was that Bishop E6 and A5, A4 comes and C4 gets undermined. But still, you just have to do that. And you have to take the double-edged chance that, yeah, maybe it goes wrong, but okay, it's a big fight. Here you're just dooming yourself to passivity with white. So I think that was a really strange and really not a very good decision from Wesley.
And last question before we throw it back to Oslo. You've played Magnus many, many times. Do you think he senses the hesitation, the slightly subpar decision making, and I mean he's not going to play it safe. Like he will just build up until a moment where he can make a break and just try to win game one with black?
Yeah, this is, well, I think any player, but especially Magnus, would recognize this as a moment to strike. You get a comfortable edge with black, no real risk. Easy natural decision, so you don't even have to spend much time or get into time trouble. And yeah, a win with black in the first game is like putting yourself in a huge position to win the match. So the question is, can white get D4, sack C4, and then get some play? I don't see it happening. I think he can just play like Queen C7 here, take over the B file. Of course, white remains solid, but yeah, I would assume Magnus sees this as an opportunity to strike.
All right. Thank you, Fabiano. We're going to send it back to Tanya, David, and Robert. Take it away, guys.
Levy, if we still have you with Fabi, I just want to check in with one question for him, that he mentioned that he would have perhaps taken some different decisions from the ones Wesley did, a different approach. What would be his approach in such a situation?
Well, but you saw my approach. I played a match against Magnus. I mean, it didn't work out. I did lose the matches, but I think my approach was correct. I mean, I took the fight with black. Also with white, I was playing very combative lines. It resulted in like a relatively low quality, but I think that was a result of the complexity of the positions that we aimed for. So like my choices with black especially, like to play the Archangel and this Bishop G4 line, were like a very clear sign, I think, that I wanted to get pretty much the most complex positions. And yeah, the Armageddons didn't go well, but my strategy for the Armageddons and my play was just, actually my strategy was okay. My play was just very, very bad in the Armageddons.
But let me ask you, if we just take the rapid portion of the two matches that you played against Magnus, like, you're probably happy with what you got, right? I mean, Armageddon is a totally different beast. With the time discrepancy, the draw odds, like it's a completely different format, really. I mean, would you agree with that? Or you kind of have to just be able to manage it all in one flow?
Yeah, no, I think the strategy worked out, and everything that I went into with the matches was good. Like my mindset was good. I was ready for a fight. I was actually feeling pretty confident. It was only some decisions at critical moments and some mistakes at critical moments that ultimately doomed me in those matches. In Armageddon, but also like in the first match especially, yeah, some decisions, not winning the second game in the second match, losing the first game in the first match, yeah, so not drawing with the white pieces in a must-draw game. Like there's a lot of things I can regret, but none of it comes down to my decision-making before the match. It was all stuff in the moment, which very often is difficult. I mean, you can't really strategize for things that happen in the heat of the moment. You can get your general strategy, and then hopefully you pick a good one. That's always a difficult question. You never know if like you play a risky line, it ends in disaster, and you're like, well, of course I shouldn't have done that. But that's always, in hindsight, those things are easy to say. Also, in hindsight, I chose a risky strategy. It worked out, and it's easy to say it was a good one. But of course, it could have also gone the other way. But generally speaking, I think what I did was correct. Like I got Magnus in positions that he's not 100% confident in. Maybe I'm also not 100% confident, but I was ready for that. Sort of mutual discomfort that we got.
Well,
Fabi,
that's why we got you on here.
Quick question for you, Fabi.
Oh, no, we're still all right. We'll stay the whole time.
You said you don't regret decisions that you made, but do you regret kind of encouraging Wesley to play 1b3? We all saw what was happening back and forth between you two.
No, the thing is, I didn't encourage him to play b3. Because Magnus had his list of goals, which I actually see right here on the whiteboard, and they're all. Okay, Levy's getting them. So they're all supposed to be for this tour, and one of them, he got all of them, right? Okay, I gave him one of them.
Is he having fun? Do we know that? Did we confirm that?
What?
He said he
confirmed
is.
that he's having fun.
Okay, well, he confirmed.
I don't know.
But
Did he?
like, he needs to get this last one. So I was like, just prepare for it, because you're going to get b3 in this match. But Magnus is not going for b3. Maybe he's jinxing, or not jinxing. He's tricking everyone by saying he's going to play b3 and then not actually doing it.
We need a sponsor on here. That's what we need.
All right, thanks, guys. And Fabi, we hope to see you again on the broadcast. If you have some time, jump in whenever. Levy, thanks for that. We'll keep checking in with you guys. And meanwhile, there are moves that have happened, some trades, some decisions, fixing of pawn structure, a queen trade declined. But it looks like Wesley is under pressure here. He's the one who's on the back foot.
This looks really bad for white. It's exactly a Magnus type of position. And the eval bar is suggesting that black is way ahead, and it's even material. And the reason why is look at how active the black queen is. The white queen sitting passively defending a pawn. The knight on c5 for black. It's peering into the white camp, hitting this d3 pawn as well. And normally when you have this backwards pawn, you want to push it. But if you push the d pawn, down goes the c pawn at the end of the line. So I feel like there are too many weaknesses in this position for Wesley. He's very passive. The b file, the only open file, is under black's control. It looks like it's going to be Magnus's game.
Yeah, so many improving moves for Magnus Carlsen right now. You can occupy the b file with your rook. You can relocate. Well, he beat me to it, Magnus Carlsen there. I was going to say you can relocate this black knight out the way. Now you kind of indirectly control this square even further, making it totally impossible for white to consider pushing this pawn forward to d4. At the right moment, black can just start expanding on the queen side. Maybe black has pawn breaks as well with f5 later, but yeah, it just feels like one-way traffic. And how can Wesley so break out? It just looks like he's almost frozen. This bishop stuck in the corner. The white queen stuck defending this mere pawn on a3. And okay, he decides to go for it right now. I said it was almost impossible, but maybe he sensed Wesley. The momentum was turning so much that he needed to go for this. And at least there's a hit on the c6 pawn as well as the black queen right now. So Magnus has a decision to make. Does he simply drop back the queen? I think the most natural decision right now. Or does he get greedy? There's also the option of perhaps taking this knight in and then winning this pawn. But I think I would be reluctant to go for this because suddenly this bishop, which landed on this diagonal as early as move 2, has potential. It has chances on the dark squares. So right now I'm expecting Magnus's queen to drop back. And okay, game on. Wesley did maybe find a good moment because not quite enough time for Magnus to capture this weak pawn on c4.
I like this decision that you're pointing out. Fall back with the queen. I saw the eval bar did not react to the trade of the bishop with the knight on d4, but it just doesn't feel like the human approach in this position. You give up a dark squared bishop. That white queen can at some point land onto h6. You're looking at that bishop from a1 spitting fire down the diagonal. Yes, you're counting at a knight block from the center of the board, perhaps the f-pawn moving forward. But unless it's based on some direct calculation, direct tricks, bishop takes knight is never a decision you want to take.
It's extremely risky, and we already see the makings of a checkmating attack if you can line your queen up with that dark square bishop. And there are some tactics that will help black out. For example, if this black queen goes all the way back to b8, it protects the pawn and threatens knight b3, a fork of not even just the queen and the rook, but also that bishop in the corner, which is the threatening piece. So if Magnus, if he calculates just one move ahead, because so many of us would we'd refuse this line on the spot. I can't allow that dark square bishop looming, just sitting back on a1. But I think he actually get rid of that piece very quickly, in which case this is going to be a better pawn structure for him and the advantage.
That's a really important point because you see bishop takes knight and somehow there's a psychological block in chess players to make such a move, giving up this powerful bishop for the knight. And Magnus calculates it, he finds it, and he goes for the best move.
He goes for the best move. Whether it's the best follow-up is unclear so far because he didn't drop back the black queen, as looked really, really strong right there. He has blocked the bishop's diagonal, however. He has moved in for the kill of the c4 pawn. So still advantage black, but Wesley, he's given himself some chances, and looking at the clock times, it's not over yet. Far from it. Wesley, so I think he played the best practical choice, pushing d4 there before it was too late, before he was just eternally passive. And it's just about whether he can somehow trick Magnus now, break through the barrier of the black knights.
And most players would prefer to be a pawn down for some activity. You don't want to sit passively, which is what Wesley's position looked like before he decided to strike with d4. So it was a good decision, a needed decision from Wesley. He grabs his pawn on d6, and the c4 pawn is loose, but Magnus instead, he hops his knight forward. There may be some threats, not just against this queen, but also the king. That f2 pawn is a bit vulnerable. That knight on d3, that's a really strong piece.
And you pointed out the threats against the white king, potentially, the queen. There's also the a3 pawn that the white queen cannot stay connected to. You move that queen anywhere. I'm picking up that a3 pawn. I'm attacking that rook on d6, winning more tempo.
Yeah, actually, this rook is pretty much trapped. This rook doesn't have too many safe squares apart from dropping back to d4, suddenly blocking your own bishop's diagonal, but maybe there's a way to round up this rook in the middle. I don't really see it right now, but still looks very strong for Magnus Carlsen. And Wesley, he's about to choose a safe square for his queen. Not many options. He actually slides it across to d1 instead, and the evaluation bar drops with that move. I think your idea there, Tania, take this pawn, restore the material balance, is pretty much guaranteed. And unfortunately for white, you cannot take this knight because you cannot take a second time on d3. Your queen is stuck protecting the bishop in the corner. So black would win material. So this rook is in a bit of trouble right now if Magnus Carlsen takes this pawn.
And Wesley saw yesterday said that it's inexcusable in a mini match to lose a game with the white pieces. This one, he's got to be extremely careful. It's big advantage to Magnus right now.
And Magnus grabs that pawn, so material equality. And look at Wesley. He jettisons the pawn. He's going to lose it anyway, but plays c5. Perhaps he wants to distract some of black's pieces. In fact, if that queen takes the pawn, then that tactic that David was mentioning no longer works, because the rook can successfully take this knight on d3. You get two knights for your sacrificed rook. That would be a good exchange. But the engine does not seem to approve with Wesley's decision. It says that black is in the driver's seat. The b file is still open for the black rook to slide over. And it feels like as long as you're careful here for Magnus, white's pieces are not very harmonious. There should be a tactic in Magnus's favor.
Yeah, at first glance, if you just showed me this position in a void out of the blue, I would say it's messy. I wouldn't know who was better, who had the advantage. So the computer shows that, the evaluation bar shows that. Magnus's last move might also kind of reinforce that fact, and it's due to the fact the white queen is simply overloaded.
Really beautiful deflection idea from Magnus. He attacks the queen on d1, and he's also eyeing that rook on d6, which looks well defended for the moment. But if you play a move like queen to b1, I think knight takes f2 is one of the ideas here. If the king takes an f2, queen takes c5 with check, the rook is in trouble. The kings also might just get checkmated. If king f1, for example, bishop c4 check, intermezzo, that looks painful. So you might not even need to win the material, just win the game by delivering a checkmate. Wesley, his pieces are all over the place. I don't think he can defend them all.
This looks absolutely busted, and yes, you can keep the queen connected to the f2 pawn, but like you said, the queen is overloaded. Even if the queen was to go to f1, I think the tactics just flow and fall into place. Because yes, after knight takes pawn, you can pick that knight up with the queen, but watch out, that bishop on a1 is hanging.
Everything's falling apart, not just the bishop hanging. This knight would then drop next move. Suddenly, all the loose pieces in white's camp are just falling apart, and Wesley, he does play this move, but I think you mentioned it, Tania, knockout blow, knight takes f2, just shedding the king of its protection here. And yeah, maybe there's multiple moves. Bishop c4 looks very tempting, lining up against the queen. Other ideas in the air. It feels just too loose for white, and black's pieces, especially the queen, bishop and knight here, too strong. They've infiltrated behind enemy lines.
The hope for white was that there'd be a dark square attack, but that attack's not even getting off the ground. And the move queen f1, it seems to take away knight takes f2, but as Tania brilliantly just showed there, the tactic still works in black's favor. So it's one of these things where multiple white pieces defend the square, Black doesn't have any more firepower aiming at it, but because White's pieces are scattered and they all needed to protect one another, knight takes f2 is a beautiful shot. But as David said, even a simple bishop slide, bishop back to c4 or bishop to c2, these moves will still be good. And yeah, he moves bishop to c4. It's, I think, the most natural move if you don't see the tactic on f2.
Yeah, and big threats. White's rook, we've been talking about it. It's pretty much trapped. Black's queen is going to come back and take the pawn we mentioned on c5. White is stuck. White is passive. And this, again, it feels like it's just a continuation of the narrative. Wesley being passive, making negative decisions. Look at that white queen next to its white king. It stemmed from the opening, simply. He was just playing really tentatively, not really wanting to play kind of principled moves. And now he's just being punished.
Threat is stronger than its execution. Magnus Carlsen keeps all the threats on the board against the c5 pawn, tactics on f2, and Wesley so in deep trouble with just a minute on the clock. But Magnus as well coming down to those seconds. He needs to finish this.
He does, and I think he can steal the pawn on c5. That's step one. That white rook can barely escape. It was a good point to note that that rook doesn't have very many moves remaining, but I'm curious what Magnus is thinking about. Is he looking for a follow-up, or is he actually looking to end the game on the spot with something tactical, whereas he can just snag the pawn and be happy?
Yeah, it feels like Magnus now, his clock time is the main thing. It is Wesley So's major hope right now. It's the only thing that could trip him up, Magnus Carlsen, because just take a pawn off the board. You're up on material. There we go. He captures, forcing the white rook back to an awkward square here, clumsy square, and sooner or later, Magnus can start pushing pawns. Magnus can improve his rook. Still, he has fantastic pieces here as Black. Maybe he's looking too much for a knockout blow. He doesn't need anything immediate. He's got a long-term advantage.
He's down to under 20 seconds. This is a messy position. He moves his queen back from the square it came from, which was a good decision. The evaluation bar on the left-hand side of the board, it approves. So, Tanya, the time, 20 seconds, are you getting nervous for Magnus, or do you still think is everything under control?
I think it's chaos still. You've got so many minor pieces, and that bishop on a1, as long as it's alive, you've got to watch out for any kind of threats building up against the black king. Right now, Wesley just creating a lift square for his own king, but Magnus's pieces are so dominating. He does fall back with the knight. Feels like because of the pressure on the clock, he's not making the absolute best choices, but still enough to keep things under control.
Enough for now, but he has kind of wasted a bit of time with the black queen. He's retreated the black knight back. That was his best piece. But look at the nerves from Wesley So. He reached out, about to make a move, then tried to hide it. And the nerves are kicking in now. It's the first game of the day. The first game is always the most nervy for both of them as they try to get back in the zone. Wesley finds a great move, trying to trade off the queens. White's queen was passive, Black's queen was active. Those pieces off the board, and he can breathe a sigh of relief. So great move, Magnus. Reluctantly, look at Magnus's face suddenly. It's under 10 seconds.
Yeah, he's 5 seconds on the clock. He does trade the queens. He does have the extra pawn, but watch out for that bishop pair. That bishop on a1 gives White long-term compensation. Black's rook stuck on the last rank, defending any checks of rook d8, and now Wesley gets rid of that knight, the key knight on e5 that was blocking the bishop on a1. Wesley moving forward for the initiative.
But I love the way that Magnus is playing this, because now all of his pieces are defended, so he can push his pass a pawn. Wesley has that under control for now, but Magnus, with no time on his clock, he's making sure that some of his decisions will be easier. He will not blunder a piece, at least not yet.
Yeah, the last 5-6 moves have gone in Wesley So's favour in terms of surviving, not losing on the spot, but Magnus is still safe. Magnus still has the extra pawn. Wesley's still nervous, retreating there with the white rook. I'm not sure whether he could have kept it active or not. Either way, now he should be trying to use this momentum. He should be trying to create threats, as he just does against Black's bishop, which is slightly loose. Ooh. And Magnus countering by trying to infiltrate with a black rook down to the first rank.
And White's dark square bishop is kind of trapped over there, so knight d3 played, apparently a huge mistake, and Magnus pushes his pawn, giving up his bishop to win a knight. It's a winning advantage because the bishop on a1 is trapped.
And Wesley So, with 2 seconds on the clock, makes a move. He gives the check, comes back with the rook. There's panic, and Magnus picks up another pawn.
Wow, Wesley So missed that one. Frustration visible on his face there. Now 2-pawn advantage for Black, and White's remaining pawns are dropping off. 3-pawn advantage for Black. This one is winning for Magnus. No time, Wesley So. He made that move with 1 second left. And the Black King is too safe.
Wesley barely getting his moves up, but you could see his body language. He's pretty much resigned before he's tipped the king over. He saves his bishop, but those passed pawns for Black, they should end the game. Magnus gaining time with every move. 3-second increment, everybody. It's bonus time. And those knights, they're hopping in. And now with the trades, when you're head material, you're happy to see pieces come off the board.
And you can see the relief on Magnus. He knows that he's so close to this one. That rook will jump to the second rank, giving a check. The pawns are marching forward. And with the dark square bishop gone, Black's king in absolute safety. And we're going to see the pawns make their way towards White's camp. F3 coming in. And Wesley looks like he's almost on the brink of giving up. You just have to watch out for one threat. That e-pawn, e6, is something that you need to keep under check.
Yeah, and Magnus, okay, he moves his king, but he didn't have too much time either. Still not over this game. Wesley, so he's got one of the pawns back. White's e-pawn still alive. Can he keep the tricks going? And White pawn marches. But I think Magnus has spotted a nice trick here. He will be able to stop this white pawn from promotion.
Oh. That's beautiful recognition from Magnus, giving that check so the rook can stop the pawn. And Wesley, now his hopes are pretty much dashed. Black has, what, 3 extra pawns in a rook endgame?
And that e-pawn stopped, the a-pawn marches forward, and Wesley knows that this is all over. It's unstoppable. He will have to give up that e-pawn. He tries to create tricks, and he gives up. Wesley so resigns. Magnus Carlsen takes the lead in set 2. What a game with the black pieces, getting the initiative. Wesley guarded, playing cagey at the beginning, and that seemed to cost him a lot.
I think it was overly cautious play from Wesley So. He wanted just a position where he could try to outplay Magnus Carlsen, but look at this man. Does he look like someone who gets outplayed very easily? The answer is absolutely not. So Magnus opened one file. That was enough to gain the initiative. He ended up making White's pieces scattered, and that's why he leads in this second set, 1-0.
Magnus Carlsen with the lead, which means Wesley So has to first equalize the score, then look for his win to take it to set 3. The task gets more and more impossible. How do you make this mission possible for Wesley now?
Oh, it's going to be so tough. Losing with White is the most heartbreaking thing as a chess professional. It's demoralizing. He knows he lost with White yesterday as well. At the moment, Wesley, it feels like he woke up halfway through that game, started playing great fighting chess, but it was too late, and that might break his confidence. It's going to be hard. It's going to be so tough.
Yeah, Wesley is not only fighting the best player on the planet, but his own mind right now, given the math situation. This is looking close to impossible for me right now. Wesley himself said it. Losing a game with the white pieces is absolute disaster. David, he started slow, but where did Magnus manage to strike?
Well, Magnus managed to work his magic in the middle game. We saw Magnus pick up a few pawns. White's position was too passive, too loose, and Magnus was able to cash in. But it was the closing stages that Magnus's pure endgame magic really shined through. And it was these final stages. Black was 3 pawns up. We'd pretty much written it off this game. These black pawns have stepped far down the board, close to promotion now, but there's a threat of White's pawn stepping forward. The remaining chance for Wesley So, and the style in which Magnus was able to turn this in his favour was really impressive. King to g6, first of all, stepping out of this 7th rank, and after a check, king activity in endgames. He steps forward even further, and it was here, hunting down the white bishop, that Magnus calculated accurately with no time on his clock. Pawn to e6 is scary. White now 2 squares away from touchdown, but after taking this bishop, this pawn is stoppable. And this check, another check now from the Black Knight, and finally a rook slide clinched this game for Magnus Carlsen. The pawn was under lock and key. Yes, he had to part with his knight, but Black has too many pawns and soon won the game.
There were multiple moments in that endgame stretch where Magnus protected indirectly. Instead of putting a piece to defend the piece under attack, he slid his rook on over. Then at the end there, he stopped the pass pawn thanks to that tactical execution. So Magnus, even though he was getting low on the clock, he showed that he still had everything under control, and nobody does it better than Magnus Carlsen.
It got chaotic, but Magnus Carlsen once again showing why he is the world #1. And right now, whether you're a Magnus fan or a Wesley fan, you've got to be a chess fan with all the action that we're seeing, and Danny is in the fan zone in Toronto. Danny, what's the vibe after that Game 1 action?
What's the vibe after that Game 1 action? I'm going to ask the crowd. What's the vibe after Magnus got Game 1? I think we had a lot of fans when it went down in real action. Seems to be a lot of Magnus fans here, maybe because he spends so much time hanging with these guys, the chess bras, but okay. Heartbreaking for Wesley So as Magnus Carlsen continues to dominate pretty much every game of chess he plays. And we're changing the game of chess here. We got live fans. We're doing stuff that's maybe never been done before in chess. And we think chess can change the world. On that note, I'm going to throw to what's going to be our next big event after this. It's Chess.com's Chess for a Cause. We partnered with Tunde Onakoya and Chess in Slums Africa to do something that's never been done. We're trying to get 5,000 scholarships for kids in Africa. You can go to go.chess.com/for-a-cause for more. I'm going to let Tunde tell you what's going to happen when Casa Corley, Maurice Ashley, and others join him for the event on December 22nd.
Hello everyone, my name is Tunde Onakoya and I'm the founder of Chess in Slums Africa, a non-profit organization that uses the game of chess as a tool to give children living in impoverished communities access to education. In the last 5 years, we have impacted the lives of over 10,000 children, but we want to do so much more. This is why I'm happy to announce that we're joining forces with Chess.com to launch a fundraising campaign, Chess for a Cause, Chess for Everyone. Our goal is to raise money to support the education of 5,000 children next year to help them get back to school. In Nigeria alone, there are over 20 million children that do not have access to education. We want to help solve this problem, so we're launching a tournament on chess.com that you can participate in, and some of the top players in the world would also participate in it as well. The best way to support this, you can share on your social media, you can tell your friends about this, you can participate in the tournament if you're a lover of chess. Let us make every move count for the dreams of these children, because we believe they have the capacity for greatness. Thank you very much. Let's go!
I lost audio, by the way. I don't have audio from the phone. I don't know if I'm live or not.
Well, that is a live broadcast for you, but we could see all the fan zone action in Toronto that's happening. So if you're in the city, you're missing out. Get yourself at the Belfast pub. That's where it's happening. And you can also get your hands on this beautiful, beautiful display of the trophy. It's an NFT, and only one other person will have that, and that will be the winner of the Champions Chess Tour. So bid for your displayed on chesschamps.io, and you get the only other special fan edition. And that's not all. The action continues after the Champions Chess Tour final on December 18th. Mark your calendars as Levy, he took the Chile challenge first, and now he's taking on another feisty challenge against Fosti Oro. You can watch the 10-year-old Fosti take on GothamChess. Use the command stars for all details on that event. And we've got a big game too for Wesley So coming up. Will he strike against the world #1, who just looks like he's impossible to beat right now? We will be back with the action in just a few.
Hi, I'm GothamChess, and I'm here with
Fabiano Caruana.
MVL.
Denis Lazavik.
Sorry, can we start again? Magnus, who is famous from Levy's YouTube videos.
What would you rate this chess player on a scale of 1 to 10?
I'll have to rate him a 10.
9.99. 10.
If you had to rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10 as a chess player, what would it be?
If Magnus 10, I 6.
6? But then what about me, Dennis?
I'll rate myself a 10.
Probably 9.7.
9.7. Do you think others would agree?
I think so.
I don't really care if they agree or not.
Okay. How many beers would you need to drink for me to beat you in a classical chess game?
Realistically, for you to become the favorite, I think 6 or 7 pints.
Probably start with 20 and take it from there.
20, okay. What's the size of the cup?
Pints.
Wow, okay.
Well, I've never passed out from drinking beer, so I don't know what my limit is. Whatever that is, I think we're looking at that number.
10?
I think I'd still be pretty fine after 10.
20? 20 beers?
Well, if I'm awake after 20, I've been really trashed and still able to play decently.
How much money would you need to be paid to try chess boxing?
$1 million?
$10 million.
I can try even for free almost. No, in person authentic, of course.
The better question is there a chess player you would like to punch in the face? Don't say me, please. Okay, not yet. We're gonna describe top chess players in one word. Magnus Carlsen.
Champ.
Hikaru Nakamura.
Hikaru.
Levi Roswin.
Levi, I don't want to say this to your face, you know?
We're gonna play chess player or IKEA furniture. Soderstrom.
Okay, definitely IKEA.
Söderström as... Söderström. I'm gonna say that's a chess player.
Yes, Swedish, which is why it's...
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously Swedish.
Really? Chess player.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Oh my God.
Ostano.
Ostano? Okay, I feel like I've even seen this one in IKEA. Okay, I'm gonna go with furniture.
I'm only not sure. I'll go chess player.
It is IKEA furniture. Zaibi.
Oh, I played this guy, Amir Zaibi.
That's gotta be a chess player.
Whoa. But you know what? I think it's a chess player. At least I'm good at something.
Yeah. 20 beers. Holy
A new opening for your wall is here. Capture new major pieces on unique metal posters from Displate. Now with the official collection from chess.com. Mount them in seconds with a tool-free magnet kit and swap them whenever you like. Make your move. Get an exclusive discount on all metal posters. Shop now with the code CHESS at Displate.com.
It doesn't look like much, but neither would a Sicilian defense to the untrained eye. This is a performance enhancer. You don't see it? How about now? Manage your air quality, sharpen your performance, change the game with Air Things.
And if you're in any of these cities, you are missing out on some big action. Find the chess club in your city or the chess pub where there are watch parties going on. Don't watch this epic final by yourself. Get your friends, get your loved ones, and join the action around the world and watch chess together. And talking about partying and celebrating, one of our viewers is got big reasons to party and celebrate as he wins a Magnus Carlsen signed Secret Lab gaming chair. Congratulations to Matt Gill, our big winner of the Secret Lab chair. And there will be a big winner at the end of today. And right now, Magnus won a big game. Kaya catches up with him.
He takes the lead in the second match. Magnus, big parts of this game just incredible. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think I played well for quite a while, and then it became a mess at the end. Like, my play in the scramble was so bad. But yeah, overall, good win.
What's your analysis of Wesley, who we know he has to win this match against you? Does he seem nervous to you?
Yeah, he felt a bit shaky in this game. I think he was on the back foot very early on, and he fought back fairly well. And I mean, I didn't convert as cleanly as I could, but no, he seemed a bit shaky in general.
You're getting very close now to your third consecutive Champions Chess Tour title. Is that in your head at all now, or are you just thinking about next game?
No, obviously getting this one was big. So yeah, I haven't thought too much about it. Just try and go out and play more good chess.
Well, good luck in the next one.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, Magnus Carlsen, he will have the white pieces in the next one. And well, we all know what we're hoping for. 1b3, that's the last goal on his list to finish in 2023 Champions Chess Tour season. So will we see 1b3 from Magnus in the next game?
Classic Magnus there gets this big win with the black pieces in set 2, but still not happy with his play. Sometimes Magnus, he's his biggest critique, and he always finds reasons that he could have played better.
That's why he's the GOAT. That's, I think, same with every top sportsman. They have to push themselves. It's all about these incremental advantages, incremental improvement, and he's always looking for that next level. I think it's the same with any strong chess player, Robert.
And as we saw when Fabiano Caruana played against Magnus, very little separates them. So you have to push yourself because it's such a fine line, the little details. So you're going to be upset that you didn't play every move perfectly. As a chess player with engines out there, you know what the perfect move is. Everyone at home can play better than Magnus Carlsen by accessing their engine. So I think the players, they always want to find the best move each and every turn.
Magnus Carlsen relieved but critical of his conversion in game one, but he does get the big set lead. And I'm thinking about what Fabi said about the approach to play against Magnus in these matches. He alluded to his match and how dynamic the play was, how he went for his chances. Is that what is missing from Wesley right now?
It was Mikhail Tal who said you want to take your opponent to a deep, dark forest where 2 + 2 = 5, and there's only room out for just one of you. And that's what Fabiano said he tried to do against Magnus. Whether Fabiano was uncomfortable wasn't even the most important thing. It was making Magnus uncomfortable. Magnus was way too comfortable in game one of set 2 there. He had an advantage from the early going. He opened the file, controlled it. So I feel like Wesley will have to shake things up.
How does Wesley so drag Magnus into that deep, dark forest of complications is the big task for Wesley. That's where his chances lie. He has to strike back. He has to do it quickly. But, David, he starts with the black pieces.
Yeah, I think first job in this next game is survival. It's a long day ahead. Wesley will need to strike back at some point, but he does have the prospect of Armageddon if he just gets one more win. But he needs to stop the bleeding right now. He cannot let things spiral. This next game, if he goes too hard with black, if he gets punished, we could see a very quick day. So I think in this next one, a draw is fine for Wesley. He just needs to play himself into form.
But then he's got only one white left at the end of this. If he manages to equalize things, not get into too much trouble, and that ends in a draw, I would leave him with one white. Is that hedging too much on that final white?
You just want to give yourself some chances. I'm with you that the fewer games that remain when you still have a deficit against Magnus Carlsen, you're not a happy camper. But for Wesley, if he loses game 2, it's done. If he draws game 2, gets white in game 3, even if he draws that third game, there still will be a fourth, and then he can go all in. I think he should try to take this the distance. He should not commit too far and lose the game 2 with the black pieces from the start. So Wesley, I know it's difficult for him, but he needs to be calm right now.
It's difficult for him, and you can see it in his face as well right now as he walks in. He's looking shaky to me. That confidence, that belief, he needs to up-talk and find that in him. It's been a tough start for Wesley. So the big question, how does he manage to find that champion in himself, which he's done so many times? The city which he thrives in, plays the best chess in. He has been playing phenomenally in the round robin, plays with the black pieces, twiddling there with the pieces.
Yeah, and he has to do anything that puts him in a good mood right now. Fiddle with some pieces, whatever it is, listen to some music. He needs to get in the zone, Wesley. So he's done it before. He's beaten Magnus several times in rapid chess, Fischer random chess. He's been in that mindset before. He's felt that exhilaration, but he needs to somehow make sure it happens in these next 3 games.
Wesley looking a bit nervous right now, walking from board to board. Finally, he takes his place. He takes the seat where he will be fighting to survive. For now, he starts with the black pieces. For Magnus, we saw his approach earlier where, needing only a draw, he decided to play 1 e4, inviting Wesley into his preferred Berlin and forcing Wesley to choose the Sicilian. Can we expect the King's Pawn opening from Magnus in this one?
I definitely think that Magnus should go for it because he had a stable position, the Alpine Sicilian. And here we go. We'll see if this comes true. And there's e4, best by test.
E4 best by test, and Wesley so trying to create his chances. Has to go for the Sicilian.
Wow, Wesley so playing the Sicilian just as he did yesterday. Magnus goes for something also offbeat here, not an open Sicilian, not any bishop b5 checks that I would perhaps have predicted before the day. He puts the white bishop on c4. So this is going to a bit of a side there from Wesley. So I was going to say it's going to be a quiet maneuvering battle.
Not just a side, but Wesley has frequently taken his glasses off before the start of the game. He's got them on, so I don't know if that gives him some kind of extra vision, if that will help him out here. But Wesley does seem bothered, and how could he not be? He's trailing 1 set to none, and now in the second set, he's also lost the first game. But this is just a position at this stage. He's not necessarily going to find winning chances with the black pieces. So if he could stabilize in this one, then go back to the drawing board with the white pieces.
Yeah, and even if he isn't able to get an advantage out the opening with black, get an attacking position out the opening with black, first you just have to survive the early stages. And I think Magnus's opening here is pretty much designed to push the tension into the middle game, into the later phases. So Wesley should be happy. I think he should be thrilled with the outcome these last few moves. Magnus pausing as well right now. Of course, it's a level position. White might be the first to try and break out in the center, but Wesley's done nothing wrong. He's got a healthy development plan here. Black's going to castle, Black's knight's going to come out, and Magnus gaining space on the flanks. It feels like Magnus is playing against e5 as a first move. Feels like he's set up in Italian fashion, but he's playing against the Sicilian, so there will be some added twists a bit later on.
Slow start to this one. Magnus keeps it in close Sicilian territory, but at some point we are expecting a central break either from white or from black, seeing that deep pawn move forward. For Wesley, right, and it does immediately. So Wesley going for d5. Magnus doesn't pause, gives a check. And before we deep dive into this analysis, I want to ask you, David, how much of a challenge is it for Wesley right now to also leave behind what has just happened in game one with the white pieces?
It's a challenge. He wouldn't be human if he didn't feel the effects, feel the kind of aftermath of that heartbreaking defeat in the previous game with white. And yeah, I think Wesley more than others, wow, moving his king out of this check, not even blocking, it definitely feels like that previous game has got to him. This might be a decent decision. There's nothing wrong with it because the center's closed, but it does feel like Wesley more than others would be kind of affected by the psychology here. And look at him, he does not look happy at all at the board. This is by far the lowest we've seen him this week.
But it's a good move. That light square bishop that just gave the check is almost trapped. If you gave Wesley the turn, that bishop is going to be eliminated. So I think that Wesley made a good practical decision in a game where he wants to give himself some chances. I think he has chances now. Even if he's looking dejected, he should be focused because Magnus has to figure out how to save that piece.
This is heartbreaking to see. All week we've been seeing Wesley in great spirits. He's been joking. He's been bringing so much positive energy, happy. And right now we're just seeing a completely different Wesley. So he's broken from what has just happened in game one, or is this just mind games? I'm not sure, but Wesley needs to get himself together.
Yeah, he looks dejected on the camera, and the camera images, the board, they do not match. I kind of agree with Robert here that he might be lulling his opponent into a false sense of security, Wesley, so, because actually on the board, it's getting a bit sharp now, and that should suit him in a situation where he needs to strike back, he needs to win at some point today. A bit of a shake of the head, though. But why? It's still a tense position on the board. Everything to play for. All pieces left. White's bishop will soon be trapped.
If we can get the analysis board here, because this is a critical moment, and Wesley is continuing to shake his head. He's got multiple options here, one of which is to ignore the fact that his knight's under attack and counter against the light square bishop. But he can also bring his knight back to the starting point. And how is that bishop escaping? Let's say you go knight to g8, and white plays d4. Let's free up a diagonal for the bishop. Black plays c4. Oh, no, you don't. You're not getting out of here. Now how do you save the bishop? You have to, I think, play the move pawn to a5 just to avoid this trap. But after a6, bishop a4, queen takes a5, I don't even care. And he's played knight g8, so step one, it's the good decision. You've stolen a pawn. Now Magnus has to prove the compensation. We know the black king will not be perfectly safe. It lost the right to castle. But you have the material, and this is the imbalance that you would hope to have in a must-win type of game.
This is a dream. This is a fantasy for any player in a must-win situation. He's a pawn up, and this is the most logical line right now. I think Magnus would be forced to kick that black queen away and then create some luft, some escape squares for the white bishop. But yeah, I mean, it's imbalanced. The center is blocked. There's going to be no quick draws here. You have extra material. What more could you want? Why is Wesley shaking his head right now? It's a mystery. I love his choices here. He's about to trap this white bishop.
And Magnus needs to react to that big threat on his bishop on b5. But even this final line that you just showed, the final position that you showed, it feels like because of the lack of development that we see on the board, on the right side of the board, that even down a pawn, Magnus should have compensation. But that's exactly what Wesley is aiming for right now. An imbalanced position where he's up material and his opponent, Magnus Carlsen, has to prove compensation.
And that word compensation is often one we use when we don't know how to prove that compensation. Like, oh, we see that it's even because there's compensation for the sacrifice pawn. What does that mean? Where's a George Carlin skit, may he rest in peace, about compensation? But it is a word that we often use because we're not exactly sure which side we'd even prefer. White will get some chances because black lost the ability to castle. That king has already moved. And you see Magnus, he plays the move a5. And if I'm Wesley, here it comes, a6. Take that pawn on a5 and then figure out the rest later. Magnus has more to prove than Wesley at this stage.
A spicy opening and exactly the kind of perhaps chess that Fabi was earlier advocating for, going for it, taking these chances. And we're going to see Magnus trying to prove that compensation. Well, visually, it's clear that you've got to target that lack of development, that king on the f-file. Right now, hoping for a central close, that d-pawn moving forward. And perhaps we can see Magnus trying to open up that f-file to try to line that rook against the king. Move the knight, step away with that knight, get that f-pawn moving up the board, trying to create chances for a king attack.
Yeah, Magnus would love to open it, hence his last move. The pawn pushing forward to c4. Whether it's breaking open the f-file, as you indicate there, Tanya, whether it's just exploding the center somehow. If Magnus opens things, black's lack of development will come back to haunt Wesley. So this one's very much hanging in the balance. Your thoughts there about compensation, Robert, reminds me of all these old books I grew up reading. The unclear symbol, this kind of infinity symbol. It was just left at the end of any complicated variation like this because authors don't know, commentators don't know. It just looks messy. And there's no kind of specific way to define this position in one sentence. We can say black's up a pawn, white is ahead in development. But it's still up to the players to prove it. And Wesley blocks the center even further.
Well, that infinity symbol is also one for forever. And I'm forever loving this kind of chess on the board, where now we are definitely going to see some dynamics on the board, the imbalances here. And I think this makes it clear that Wesley is not hedging all his hopes on that final white game. He wants to try to get a decisive one in this one.
It's sort of Magnus's fault because the line he played is not standard against the Sicilian. As David said earlier, it's like he was playing against the king's pawn opening, trying to get an Italian game where it doesn't exist. And right now he is down a pawn. That bishop on a4, it looks like it's pinned. It could have been won, but that dark square bishop for white can always slide one square on the diagonal to hit the black queen. So even just a turn ago, before pawn to d4 was played, b5, that's a move that looks like it wins a piece because that bishop on a4, unfortunately, it can't leave as the rook on a1 is loose behind it, but bishop to d2 will take care of business, forcing the queen either or the pawn push. But that's neither here nor there because Magnus continues his development, bringing his knight into the center. That knight may go to b3 to kick the queen. It may go up to e4 and over towards the king side. That black king on f8, there aren't too many white attackers in front of it, so it's not unsafe just yet. But down the line, once the knight jumps, then the dark square bishop gets involved. And as Tanya said, maybe even pawn pushes later. It does seem like white can launch an attack. But for now, I would say the status quo is allowing black to retreat the queen, develop pieces, and say, I am a pawn to the good. Continue to prove it, Magnus. Let's see it.
Very often in these kind of pawn structures that we have, the one that black has created with the c5, d4 bind, we've been talking about the break from the f-file. You can also start targeting the base of that pawn c5. Breaks like b4 are always in the air, and watch out for them. They might come at some point. Once the queen does retreat, white will have the option to try to destabilize Wesley in the center. And we've seen these ideas in the Benoni, in the Banco, from different sides, the reversed colors. I won't be surprised if the play shifts from the king side to the queen side.
Yeah, and if we look at the pawn structure, Magnus has the most advanced pawn right now, or one of the most advanced pawns in the center. It's basically cutting the board in half. So white here, with the space advantage, with the lead in piece development, is able to plant pieces in the center and then switch focus. I completely agree. And yeah, this king on f8, I really hate. It is really going to cause Wesley a lot of trouble long term. I think it's more the attitude that we're impressed with here in the studio, the fact that he's fighting. And this is what Wesley needed to show in the first game and what we're loving right now. Yes, white's position objectively is probably better. Yes, white's position is probably more fun to play because who cares about a pawn? It's more about black's king being misplaced, black's pieces half asleep on the back line. But Wesley is fighting. He's been ambitious. He's taken a pawn. He's going to try and hold on to it and definitely going to put some burden on Magnus a bit later. He does need to act energetically, though, Wesley, so the camera picture is slightly worrying on that front.
And when you're ahead by material, we're often told to trade down, and that could help in your defensive task as well, because with fewer pieces remaining on the board, there are fewer attackers that White will have. And he plays queen c7. I was wondering about bishop d7 as well, just developing while trying to trade off the light square bishops. I see the b4 plan. Tania mentions a really good idea, trying to undermine the black pawn structure. Black can at some point take on b4, giving up the center for some queenside passers. The imbalances will continue, and that's really all you can hope for at this early stage. We're only 12 moves into this game, and Magnus, how could he be comfortable here? It's a fun-looking position. It's dynamic play, but as Fabiano was advocating for, you need to put Magnus in uncomfortable territory. This isn't preparation. This is all inspiration, and I think that for a change, it's Wesley who should be inspired to look for his advantages here. He is up a pawn. The e5 pawn may be more of a target than an asset from the White's perspective. I like the play that Wesley is showing. He just needs to keep pacing the clock and keep his confidence high.
Finally, we are seeing some ambitious chess by Wesley, so perhaps something that he had to do earlier, perhaps something that he needed to start the match with in set one itself. But now it is time for him to go for it, and that's what he does. Bishops have been offered to be traded here. Magnus goes for the more solid approach of developing pieces, getting them at the right spot before you think about any break, whether it's the f-pawn, the b-pawn, or even eyeing that d6 square. That's a nice juicy post for the knight to land on. Yes, it will result in the trade of the bishop and the knight, but if that e-pawn gets to d6, that could be a really powerful pawn as well. Is knight d6 an idea that Magnus can work towards?
Yeah, let's check it out, Tania. Let's try and see whether Magnus can land a monster knight, an octopus knight on d6. And I'm wondering whether you trade off. Let's say we ignore it.
He answers for us,
He
David.
does trade off. Let's say we see a capture with the black knight hitting this pawn in the center, and now the white bishop comes out. If black does nothing here, I'm not sure how black does nothing, then the knight can land on d6. And just to show how strong this pawn would be in this square, I think this would actually land white a decent advantage. You open up the rook, the white knight might come in, the white queen might follow on the diagonal. Still unclear whether Magnus should rush, I will admit, but definitely on the card. So I think we'll see that first move at least hinting that the knight might land on that outpost on the board.
I think Wesley should push his h-pawn. I know you're not supposed to push pawns in front of your king when there might be an attack, but he needs to develop his knight out of g8. That knight was developed very early in the game, then had to step back to its initial square. But I would play h5 so that I could play knight h6 next. You play knight d6. I don't have to take you right away. And I think that's an important instructive moment for many people at home. They think, well, I need to take that knight. It's going to threaten me. But you could start with knight h6. There's nowhere that knight can go from d6. You can take it on the next turn or in the future. So for Wesley, he is holding on to everything in both directions. It's getting extremely complicated. There's no denying that. But this is the territory that Fabiano was saying you need to take Magnus. He's not always perfect. He plays with high accuracy. It was over 98% in those 4 games yesterday. People are going crazy on social media, and they should, because that pinpoint precision is what earned Magnus so many points. But this is the type of position that, like Alireza Firouzja, the style he plays, it's less accurate. I'm putting that in quotes, but it's because he's taking his opponents into this treacherous territory where it's so difficult to find the accurate continuations. I think that Wesley, he needs to keep the pace, as I've been saying, play h5, develop the knight to h6. It's a messy game. Just go with it.
And we speak so much about styles of the top players. Now, one thing's clear. To be the best in the world, to be in the top 10, you have to have a universal style. You can't have big gaping holes in one territory of the game and be extremely strong in the other. You can't give targets to your opponent. And these players, these top players, they are universal in nature. They're good in every kind of positions. But I think when we speak about stylistic chess, we're referring to instinctively and intuitively the kind of decisions that they take, David. And this kind of a position that we have in front of us, intuitively, who does it suit more?
Oof, that one is hard to say. I think actually it suits both. Well, I was going to say it doesn't suit both right now, and I think that benefits Wesley so. You talked about the deep dark forest. This looks pretty murky to me. And also, we have to remember in 2019, winning the World Fischer Random Championship against Magnus Carlsen, that was random. That was kind of pieces all over the board with weird, kind of non-typical patterns, and that's where Wesley so has his chances against Magnus. No matter the objective evaluation, he's achieved at least a mess on this board. And I saw him reach for the pawn, Robert. He pushes it just one square. Either way, he's woken up. And like you say, Tania, yes, it's kind of the style that we like to talk about players. It's about the instinct. It's about their preferences. But as long as he has enough time on the clock, he can maneuver this position. He can work with it. It's given him a great foundation to fight. So I think as long as he stays at a decent time on the clock, this position still plenty of chances as Magnus pushes his h-pawn forward as well.
Well, that caught me by surprise a little bit. I thought he would push that one square like Wesley just did instead of two, but he's taking away Wesley's immediate threat. Though that pawn h4, it does stick out. It's in front of your king. It can become a target. Magnus, he looks like he is enjoying this position. It's one where you really need to dig deep and calculate, and he's ahead on the clock. That's actually, I think, maybe the most important aspect of this position. You see the evaluation bar off to the side saying, white maybe slightly better. A lot of you saying, well, isn't there a pawn missing from this position? Both players, they don't have that assessment. They're working with their own internal assessment functions, and they know it's unclear. That is obvious. But now, where does Wesley go? His kingside is not developed. He needs to get those pieces out.
Yeah. He's got an extra pawn, but he's playing without the rook on h8, without the rook on a8, and for now, even without the knight on g8. Wesley needs to find the time and moves to actually develop these pieces to make something of that extra pawn. And yes, it's exactly the kind of position that you're looking for given the mat situation. But if we keep that aside, objectively here, to me, it does look like white should have enough play with plans of the knight jumping to d6, with plans of the b pawn moving forward, undermining the center as we have it. I would pick white here. David, what about you? Robert, if you had to pick a color here, would you go for material or compensation in this one?
I think until this last move, I might have taken black, just because I like my material. Yes, white's a-pawn being absent isn't relevant right now. Probably won't be relevant till the endgame, this material balance. But I thought black had stability. I don't like Wesley's last move. It's taken that square that you wanted away from that black knight on g8. It feels like this has helped Magnus, this little inclusion of pawn pushes. Magnus has gained space. Now I might take white, but... yeah, I mean, that's how fickle top chess players can be. If you ask the players, maybe they would say the same. It's unclear. I think, again, I still love what Wesley's been doing in terms of attitude, but it does feel like it doesn't suit his kind of mindset for the tournament right now.
And I'm trying to figure out what his plan was, because h4 does stop his immediate threat, which is to push the g-pawn, and he goes one square with it. So he is taking this very cautiously. It's a ginger-like approach. He's just moving slowly, trying to make things work on the king side. And meanwhile, the idea that Tania was advocating for a long time ago, pawn to b4, has been played. So I don't like the way that Wesley's handled the last few moves. Maybe he can actually take this pawn on b4. I know he drops a central pawn in return, but things remain messy, although I am starting to like Magnus' chances because of Wesley's last two moves.
Yeah, and Magnus's practical skills are so strong. Wesley spent an age deciding to push a little pawn on the king side. Magnus instantly reacts by throwing a pawn forward on the queen side. He was thinking in his opponent's time, first of all, then he was ready to pounce on his opponent's vulnerability. And look at those white pieces in the middle of the board. Centralization over everything, and looking very strong for white right now.
And there's just so much to learn, because when I brought up the idea of b4, right, a couple of moves ago, that's what maybe many of us would do instantly. But Magnus first gets all his pieces at the right position. He develops everything, gets everything centralized, and only then strikes in the center. And that's just what I see these top grandmasters always do. They wait with the threat until the right moment.
Yeah, they build up, they strike when they sense their opponents aren't quite ready. And Magnus, he played 2-3 moves in a flurry there. Now he'll pause again. And he still has to find a plan of attack against the black king. But even if he were to take a slow approach, even if white's knight now on the d-file that just captured a pawn drops back, throw those white pawns in the center up the board, black is frozen. We've talked about it before. I was trying to avoid objective kind of assumptions here, like white being better, black being better, because I loved what Wesley was doing, taking risks. But now the dust is starting to clear, starting to settle, and black's piece is just not ready for the fight.
And white does need to keep an eye on that h4 pawn. Look at Magnus. He's creating a direct threat. That queen is in line with the black king. I think Wesley pushed his pawn one square to g6. So his king, and there it goes. It runs out of the way. We should show that a moment ago, ideas with knight takes pawn on e6 were really threatening. Bishop takes h6 check. Knight takes e6 to follow because the f7 pawn was pinned. So Wesley, he is scrambling out of the center of the board. That's the good news. And he still has a plan. He could push that h-pawn, get his knight out to h6. So Magnus does have work to do here. This isn't just like, oh, suddenly we love his position, it's game over, and he hops that knight into d6, which I think we all were saying was a good idea. If you take on d6, it's replaced by pawn. But maybe he should take it and brings queen out to c5. e6 to e5 becomes a threat in these positions. The knight now can go out to f6 instead of sitting at home on g8. So at least for Wesley, there are some plans for him in this position as compared to before where he was completely frozen.
Yeah, I actually think he'll be loving this little transition as black, Wesley. So I'm expecting him to use the c5 square as well for the black queen. But it's just the fact that at least now he has something clear to do. Earlier, it was very kind of, it was very unclear to say the least about where black's pieces should go. But this knight coming out will be a lifesaver. And wow, he drops back with the black queen instead. That feels a bit odd somehow, feels counterintuitive. The black queen's so passive, but still, he's getting developed. That black knight coming out. Magnus needs to strike here and now, still a pawn down.
Yeah, but he could have gotten developed with tempo. Put pressure on white's pieces. Attack that knight on d4. Keep your queen connected to that d6 pawn. I loved your idea of queen to c5. The more active approach in this position, which would be the logical follow-up to what Wesley has been doing with his play so far. Once again, to me, this just reflects Wesley's cautious, overly cautious play.
I think part of it, though, is done because of the time. I'm looking at Wesley's clock. He only has 4 minutes remaining. That b7 pawn was a bit loose. So maybe he's just saying, I'm going to defend everything. And perhaps he believes in the foundation of his position because he is going to play knight f6 next. His rooks will be connected. And that pawn on d6, which really is a thorn in black's side. In fact, it forced the queen backwards. That's something that you have to keep an eye on. Maybe Magnus will have to drop that later in the game if he can't keep it under control. And the last thing I'll say is that bishop on f4, if that were on b2, oh, this could be game over. So I'm already actually thinking of rerouting that bishop back to c1. Retreating moves often the hardest to play in chess, but as a commentator, I always have to say, look what your pieces are, look where they'd be best placed. A dream move could be a killer move, and a bishop getting back on over there at some point, maybe even now, could have really hurt Wesley.
That's a really nice plan that you're pointing out, Robert, about rewriting that bishop from f4 to the killer diagonal, the sniper that it would be on that b2 square. And perhaps that's something on Magnus's agenda right now. We speak about AlphaZero all the time. We speak about how Magnus channels his own AlphaZero and that h4. Do you want to include h5 in this position? Do you want to fix that pawn on h5? Or do you think this is the better pawn structure for white?
I think this is a fine pawn structure for white. I think keep that up your sleeve for later. It's always going to be in the air, pawn to h5 for white, trying to break open the black king. Why rush when it might become stronger later when things have cleared up a bit? I'm loving the white bishop stepping back. White's rooks at some point need to join the fun, but Magnus in the tank now for 2 minutes. Again, it's that murky type of position which nobody's comfortable in. Fabiano said it himself. Fabi, in those games against Magnus, he won 3 of them. He wasn't comfortable, but nor was Magnus, and that is already step 1. And you can see Magnus not entirely sure what he should be doing next. It looks nice, pretty for white, but you're still a pawn down. That's in the back of your mind. Match situation in the back of your mind, and anything could still happen here.
And those are exactly the kind of positions we saw in the AI Cup, where Maxime booked his ticket to Toronto. He took down Magnus not in 1 set, but in 2 sets in the finals. And it was exactly these kind of chaotic positions where both players have chances, opportunity to go completely wrong, a mess on the board, and Maxime was on top of that. And it feels like Fabi took a leaf out of that Maxime book and created his chances and won 3 games against Magnus in these positions. So Wesley's managed to achieve it, but the one thing that is a little different from those other 2 storylines is the clock situation. Because Fabi and Maxime also did keep pressure on the clock. And right now I see Wesley failing to do that.
But Magnus is in for a 3+ minute think at this stage. You are right that Wesley's been trailing on the clock, but right here, right now, if Magnus continues to be perplexed by the position because it's super complicated, then Wesley can say, all right, I'm not getting checkmated. I'm still a pawn ahead. And look at those queenside passed pawns that Wesley has. He has 3 pawns on the A and B files, and that pawn on B4, that one could be an annoying passer. And that pawn on D6, the most advanced white pawn, as we've been talking about, that can actually be scooped up at some point if Magnus isn't careful. And Magnus, he's down below 3 minutes, 45 seconds. He spent nearly 4 minutes on this turn. David, he's not happy about some of these developments.
Yeah, he's frozen somehow, Magnus Carlsen. He spent more than half of his remaining time on this one move. And I did also notice Wesley shaking his head, kind of put his head on his hand. It feels like Wesley's playing mind games, bluffing Magnus here, trying to distract Magnus somehow. But yeah, the Norwegian here, the world number 1, he has to move fast. This little change now, the fact that black has a clear next couple of moves, black's knight coming out, that's pretty much a pre-movable choice on the next turn. Things could turn. Wesley should be happy, should be thrilled with how things are going.
And we know we've been building up to this moment in this game, right, where there are so many further critical decisions to be taken, and those extra seconds will really count on the clock. The position is just starting to get complicated right now. And we see Wesley there, his body language. If that's a bluff, that's some great acting that I've just witnessed today. I mean, it's just...
Look at him. Why is he shaking his head?
I mean, it's exactly the dream position that he wants, right?
He's shaking his head because we're talking about it, and Magnus must be paying attention to it as well. I mean, psychology plays such a huge role in each individual chess game. Magnus has spoken about this at length, and now Magnus has made his move. He slides his rook over, and that evaluation bar has slid down right towards the middle. This position is not easy for either side. Even if the engine may say, oh, it's fine for black, the position could collapse at any moment. But Wesley, he can develop that knight out to f6 and complete his development at long last.
There we go. Relatively quick there. He could have played it instantly, though, Wesley. So, and Magnus's plan is revealed. He slides his knight back, getting ready to potentially propel White's central pawns forward. And, OK, Black's still a pawn up. Activate that black rook in the corner or push. Maybe you can even push the black pawns now. And he's fine. He's healthy, his position here, Wesley. So he needs to keep putting Magnus under pressure on that clock.
I love the idea of pawn to b6 because your a6 pawn is defended by the queen, then push a5, and you create a pawn chain. It's not the most natural-looking pawn chain with the double pawns there, but it's very strong. He first centralizes rook, can hardly blame him for that, but at some point, those b and a pawns can be a huge distraction to White's pieces, so Magnus will not be able to go all in for the attack.
But does this give Magnus enough time to reroute that dark squared bishop that we're talking about? Either fall back one step or all the way to c1 and try and get it on that deadly diagonal. Once that bishop arrives on the a1, h8, it could be big trouble for black in the position. And we also see Magnus now touching the 2-minute mark. Is he getting a bit shaky?
Magnus isn't feeling too comfortable. That's obvious from his clock use here. The fact that he's blown his time advantage and is now down under 2 minutes, Magnus Carlsen. He's also still down a pawn, and I keep repeating it, but the longer that goes on, the more doubt will be in his mind. I'm liking some of those bishop maneuvers. Maybe Magnus can also try and push some of his central pawns in the next few moves, but either way, it's not an easy position to maneuver, to navigate this one. No instinctive moves. He's reaching for his bishop. All the way back.
Goes back to c1, so he's found a better diagonal for it. He remains down a pawn. If he had slid to d2 rather than c1, he probably could have just scooped up the b4 pawn, but Wesley would be able to strike in the center. And speaking of striking in the center, there goes Wesley's e-pawn. That d6 pawn, that passer for White, it could be in some trouble as black is about to surround it.
OK, and Wesley there just adjusting a piece. I didn't see him say Jadub. He did touch his rook. Magnus not calling him out on that one. But the white bishop has landed. It's on the same diagonal as the black king. Wesley now goes for that alternate plan that we mentioned. He's combining all these ideas. If black gets 2 more moves, if black gets to play pawn to a5 and, for example, offer a queen trade, put the queen in the corner, suddenly Wesley could well be better. Magnus needs to blow open the middle of the board, unleash the power of that bishop before it's too late. But 1 minute against 3.
Oh.
This is high stakes. Wesley needs to strike this game. He needs to take it, I feel, for the tournament.
This is the big opportunity that we have been waiting for Wesley so to have. And now it all comes down to, will he make the most of it or not? Will he be able to finish this job off? Because just hedging it on that last white game will not be enough against the world number one. It's a mess. Anything can happen. A game for all 3 results. And we see now Magnus down to under a minute. He's going for the kingside attack. Both players just going for it at this moment.
And the evaluation bar is dipping in black's favor all of a sudden because Magnus is going for the attack against the black king. That white king is losing some of its shelter, and if that knight on d7 could move out the way, suddenly the white pawn on g4 is in the sights of black's piece. Ooh, I love that move, king g8, getting out of that bishop's long range. I think that was the best move on the board and a really great choice in Magnus's time trouble.
Yeah, G for glory, Magnus going for it by pushing his pawn forward, but also G for gaping, because there are gaping holes around the white king right now. This could really backfire on Magnus Carlsen. He starts retreating his pieces. The white knight coming back now. Also a move that I quite like because White's knight will most likely install itself back in the center of the board soon. But Wesley, again, keep that pace going. He's found his rhythm now. The last 3-4 moves have come within 10-15 seconds. He needs to keep that pressure on. There we go again, improving his rook. What could be more natural? Really strong play by Wesley right now.
Defending the knight another time, hitting the pawn in the center. Magnus said A, now he says B, or should we say says G, G5. Attacking the knight, trying to open up the black king. And Wesley here, he can take this pawn on g5. I'd be a little bit nervous on opening up the h-file for a future checkmating attack. I wonder if he can just slide his knight back to e8 because he may give up h6 and gain the d6 pawn. And if that pawn falls, the knight is able to maneuver itself back to the f5 square, for example. I think we're talking about an advantage for Wesley. So now that I see the evaluation bar as well, saying black is indeed better here objectively.
Yeah, he's just mulling over whether to trade off. He does trade off these set of pawns. H-file is open, so black's king, white's king, both of them feeling a bit nervous about this little transformation, and he actually goes back the other way. A bit of a passive square. I liked your idea, Robert. Scoop off that far advanced white pawn, and anyone's game there. But now, Magnus, if he lands the white knight back into the center, then I think he's going to get that piece traded off. Wesley, he's got everything covered. Magnus keeps the tension. The white queen sliding slowly towards that open H-line. Wow, both kings are sweating right now.
That's a sneaky move because you're not only defending g5, but you're eyeing to go to h4 to try and set up a mating attack. Wesley grabs the pawn. Magnus strikes in the center. It is all about opening up that bishop on b2 to get it to attack the black king. Black has to make a big decision right now with that d4 pawn. You really do not want to open up the diagonal, and the rook on d6 is pinned. So watch out, you can't pick up that pawn on d4 with your own pawn.
But you can with the rook, and that's what I would go for, because if you get rid of white's best piece, I know rooks are more valuable than bishops, 5 points, 3 points, but you get a pawn as well. So you actually get 4 points for black, and then white takes that rook for 5. He goes for it. Wesley So is feeling the position.
And we can see a complete shift in Wesley So's body language as well. He's not only feeling good about the position, but he's suddenly looking confident as well. He gives up that rook for that bishop, taking away a key attacking piece in white's position. And meanwhile, those queenside pawns are going to start going up the board. Magnus makes a move and the eval bar drops.
The eval bar drops. Wesley's actually ahead on material. He's given up rook for piece. But look at this. His knight comes in now. He's got 4 versus 1 in terms of pawns on the queenside flank. And maybe Wesley missed something bigger there, something stronger. Maybe black's queen could have activated. But either way, if he stabilizes, if he avoids getting checkmated, Wesley, so long-term, black's pawns are marching, black is winning. So these next few moves are critical. They're essential. 20 seconds for Magnus Carlsen. Wesley now under 1 minute.
But Nodirbek said when he was playing against Wesley in semifinals that Wesley was shaky in time trouble. He's defending his f7 pawn, preempting any attack, but the advantage, is going up for white right now. It's because black is on the defensive. I think that queen from c8 has to leap out to f5, start posing some problems towards the white king side, but white has 2 rooks and black only has 1. A mistake from Wesley.
He's pushing pawns, but he's ignoring the flank where the action is really happening. It's all on the king side, where the kings stand right now. Magnus slices king up. Watch out for white's rook to slide behind white's queen, the open H-line. There's going to be checkmating patterns galore over there. Wesley, he has to activate his queen before it's too late.
Yeah, either give a check or come in with the queen attacking the g5 pawn, but don't keep that queen just there. You need to act right now against the threat of rook to h1. That would be game over. Wesley has to make a big move right now. He is about to play. He's under 30 seconds. I'm expecting something with the queen right now. Either give a check or the move, Robert, you were advocating for.
I think the check loses. I think that if you check from the corner, white pushes the pawn and blocks the diagonal, and then rook h1 is unstoppable, pre-movable. So he might have to play queen f5. He does that to distract white's piece. Now, queen d7, I think, is the only choice, so that when white doubles up in the h-file, you push your f-pawn and defend on the 7th rank.
He finds the best defense. Again, Wesley So 2 moves in a row. He found the only move. Magnus slides his rook across. You can see both players so nervous right now. Magnus testing the opponent, setting traps, setting threats. Wesley dodging again, defending well. He's holding on here, Wesley So.
And rook h1 is about to land. It will be the 7th rank defense from the queen with the f-pawn moving forward. Wesley immediately blitzes out. Magnus making moves with just 3 seconds on the clock. The knight jumps into the attack now, offering a trade. If it's taken, the g-pawn is weak.
And when Wesley panics, he takes a pawn off the board and now lands his knight in, but he's giving up his own black knight. And white's knight jumps in with a fork. Pieces are dropping.
But
Magnus is blundered.
F2 is fine. The rook can use the intermezzo, taking up f2 with check, and then take the white rook. Will Wesley see it?
Oh,
no,
he misses it. Wesley So could have picked up the f2 pawn with a check.
Wow, we're getting moves on the board, but Wesley could have won. He still has a pawn, though. He's about to promote. And those black pawns are running. Our board is frozen. Let's watch the players right now. Those black pawns against the might of white's rook. Wesley grabs a piece to fiddle with. It's a race.
I don't think the white rook can stop them, because there's a second pawn. He could push the a-pawn. His knight is not under attack. And by the way, the black king was threatening the white knight. There go the pawns. They're unstoppable.
Wesley's winning again. Magnus has panicked. There's nothing Magnus can do. This is a check. Black's king just moves. And those black pawns, it's all about the pawns. New queens incoming for black.
That a-pawn moves 1 step forward, and it is game over. Wesley will, for now, move forward with his king. Find a way to avoid the checks. Magnus can just give checks, but the king moves towards the center of the board.
Oh, watch out for rook d7.
Watch out.
He wants to make this, I don't know what it's called, a windmill back and forth.
But
he can still win. He's a check. He found it. and he covers the square. Wesley So wins the game. What a comeback.
Magnus Carlsen resigns, and you can see it. He was so close to taking this one. What a game. Wesley So stays in the fight, getting a win with the black pieces in a dramatic finish.
Wow, it was a deep, dark forest, and only Wesley So emerged unscathed there. We saw him bang the table in frustration before finding the winning move. The emotions are running high, but he struck back.
There's so much on the line in this match. $200,000 goes to the winner, $100,000 for the player that ends in second. We see Wesley, he looks at that poster that displayed every move matters, and Wesley found the best moves when it mattered most.
And every game matters right now, and the players are just finding out when the next game starts. You try and listen in, and Magnus, you can see he's angry.
That's why I was pushing for it, but if not, then 15. 15 is good. Okay, let's try to push 15 buffer if that's right.
Wow, and Magnus and Wesley So leave the playing arena in just a few minutes. They will be back to fight for Game 3, and Wesley is back in the match with a win, with the black pieces in absolutely chaotic position. It was a roller coaster.
And just when everybody, maybe including Wesley So, was writing him off, he finds it within himself to score a win, to deliver a punch to Magnus Carlsen, who looked indomitable thus far, but he suffers his first loss here in the title match.
Magnus Carlsen, a big wake-up call for him, that one at the end. Again, it was all about the complications, and Wesley managed to create them with the black pieces and come out on top of it.
One of the most chaotic games, one of the most unruly games I've ever seen. And in the end, it was Wesley who tricked Magnus Carlsen when the tactics started. And it was here that that madness began. White actually has a promising position. White's attack on the H-file looks extremely promising, but Wesley threw a spanner in the works. Not the best move, but a tricky move, and one that confused Magnus Carlsen. He brought his knight into d3, threatening now some ideas against the f2 pawn, threatening to come back with a check. Magnus threw his knight in with a fork, and it was here that the world number one blundered. He should simply have taken this black rook with an advantage for White. Instead, he traded off the queens. He forced the queens off the board by capturing this knight, but suddenly Wesley was winning. Rook takes pawn is even stronger, but what he played was good enough. He took this rook off the board, and suddenly you see White is a rook up. What could go wrong? It's all about these black pawns, though. These black pawns are running, they're pushing, and just to show a quick action replay of the end stages of this game, it's all about these pawns running down the board. There's two of them, and the white rook is helpless. Nothing to do here, but there was one final trick. We saw Wesley smash his hand down on the board, thinking he'd blown it. It was here in this position, and after the king slid across, rook to d7. Suddenly, White is threatening to draw. If Black promotes to a new queen, it is a draw on the spot. No escape from these checks. It's checks for eternity, but Wesley found the winning move. A bit of frustration, but he found it in the end. A knight check. The knight drops back to h5. Suddenly, the f6 square is covered, and no more perpetual check. These pawns incoming. Two queens landing. Wesley won.
There's no power quite like willpower, and I think that Wesley, he really dug deep there. He believed in himself, and he earned that victory. He stole a pawn, even though he was shaking his head, but he's the one who's making Magnus's head shake. He's probably enraged because Wesley So, all of a sudden, when the black pieces evens it up, it's 1-1. It's anybody's set, too, at the stage.
Just when we were all ready to write this off, Wesley So strikes back, and Toronto had a reaction. Take a look at what happened. A big round of applause coming in for Wesley So with that finish. And it deserved it. Finding that critical last move till the very end. Wesley staying vigilant and getting the win in. Every move matters, Robert. As you said, we saw it on the display, and you can get your hands on that display as we've got a cool 33% off. Use the code CHESS. And there is more exciting chess coming up. Toronto is where the action's happening, and we will be back with the Game 3 and a breakdown from the gang in Toronto. They are having a lot of fun, and we will have a lot of fun when we return from this short break.
Со мной сейчас сидит гроссмейстер Денис Лазавик, и мы сейчас будем его спрашивать несколько интересных вопросов. Посмотрим, как я говорю по-русски еще. Телефонный звонок или текстовое сообщение? Ну, звонок или текст?
Ну, я больше люблю переписываться. Так можно обдумать все и не нервничать.
Я тоже. Слушай, мне звонят, я просто... Это лучший вопрос сейчас. Ну, зима или лето?
Зима.
Зима. Нравится здесь?
Да,
в Торонто. Твоя самая любимая группа?
Не особо слушаю иностранную музыку, но вот я недавно послушал группу Nirvana. Ну,
Nirvana.
Ну, мне понравилось.
А русскую музыку слушаешь? Для меня B2, она очень хорошая группа.
Ну вот, когда там с папой в машине еду, там радио, и там, конечно, русские песни, да. Ну, я даже не запоминаю, как название.
Окей. Знаешь хотя бы, Виктор Цой?
Да.
Окей. Тогда хорошо. Я не так давно его узнал. Потому что я родился в США, поэтому я даже не знал его музыку, и вдруг я где-то услышал, и мне очень понравилось. Любимый создатель шахматного контента?
Мне нравится Caruana, подкаст Caruana. Могу какие-то видосики Hikaru посмотреть и так далее. На русском это, конечно, GothamChess. Смотрю там.
Oh my god, these are big Russian words. Слушай, как сказать это слово? Вообще не...
Художественная.
Художественная, вау. Художественная или научно-популярная литература?
Наверное, научно-популярная.
Кофе или чай?
Чай.
Я так и думал, но для меня кофе это я как Шерлок Холмс. Блиц или классика?
Блиц.
Я с тобой несколько раз играл, да. Я помню, может, даже 2 года назад в титульном фронтике. Я пока еще был международный мастер. Мне это очень не понравилось. Онлайн или за доской?
Онлайн.
Лучшее изобретение в истории человечества?
Интернет.
Денис, спасибо, что ответил на наши сумасшедшие вопросы.
Спасибо.
Sean, you just gave a shout out to the disc plate discount. I'm going to give a shout out to the disc plates on the wall here, right to our left. They are sexy. You can go to discplate.com/chess. You know the drill, but seriously, you should. They are pretty awesome. Like, not kidding. Like, they're so easy to throw up, and they feel really cool. And obviously, there'll be many more designs. Appreciate disc plate, and I expect a lot of fans to take advantage of those. I expect a lot of fans to be losing their minds right now, guys, because just when we were all thinking, this could be a 3-game day, Wesley So says, not so fast.
Ooh. Yeah, that was basically a much-needed wake-up call, and it was something he probably couldn't generate himself.
Yeah.
I mean, he played the right opening, but it was really Magnus who created a complicated position. Wesley lost the right to castle. It was super imbalanced despite being a pawn up. Wesley had the negative evaluation according to the computer. Right. Rook sacrifice for defensive measures and attack down the H-file.
My goodness.
Nervous decisions with 10 seconons on the clock. These guys looked human for the first time in the entire event. Yeah. Oh my God, I was on the edge of my seat.
Yeah, if I'm Wesley, we even saw it in his face. He was like, he just shaking his head after King F8, and then he leave like,
on, Danny, let's go. Let's go, bro.
You tried to beat me up.
Let's
You were
go.
so jacked. They caught that on
That
camera.
was nuts. That was like if a fighter tasted their own blood for the first time. Like Wesley went, oh yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
okay.
No,
And I mean, that was.
It
that-
literally was. It was like something woke him up.
Yeah.
And we got action here. We got
action.
drama. Who knows? Will we have tie breaks and Armageddon yet again? I don't know, but I do know that Kaya caught up with So after that literally must-win game.
What a massive comeback by Wesley. So, and I first want to know, Wesley, how are you doing right now? What's happening inside of you?
Well, it's not been a good day. Okay. Not really in a good mood at the moment.
Even after that game?
Well, it's such an ugly game, yeah. It's like I probably made like 6 blunders or something. Yeah. So.
But you win it. That must mean something.
Yeah, for sure. I wasn't especially proud of how I won, but it's very nice to get the victory against Magnus. I thought I would never make it in this, but in the end, I was just, I learned from him. He said to hustle, so I was just hustling him in the end. It kind of feel like coffee house chess, but it worked. We probably made like 6 blunders, so I mean the quality of the game was just awful. Even the opening, like I think just grabbing this pawn was a very stupid idea. Like all this king f8 business. So, like I think a4 is still theory. So I mean I should just castle, and then enjoy an equal game. But I thought I grabbed this pawn. But then White just got really good compensation for it. Like I would not recommend this pawn grab with king f8 to and knight g8 to anyone again, and I would never play it. And then it was just crazy. Like he started using a lot of time, and that gave me a lot of hope. So if he managed his time better, like I think at one move he thought for 4 minutes or something. If he didn't do that, then he would have. But it's very nice to get a victory. I think I just put too much pressure on myself. I should just play. And then if I lose, I lose. I lost him.
You've got nothing to lose, basically. You have to win this match, and you're equal now. You're tied. So what is it about now for you to be able to win this match and take it to a set 3?
I think just going for the Armageddon might be a decent idea. So I don't... Like, I already lost 2 games with White, and it's just inexcusable. But, yeah, I really hope to put up a good fight, a good show today. Not personally for myself, but for the people watching. Really appreciate them. So shout out to them.
We appreciate you, Wesley. Congrats on that massive win. Good luck in the next one.
Yeah, I really hope so. Thank you.
Huge comeback. Wesley So is ready for game 3. Back to you guys.
Well, he is putting up a huge fight, and the fans do appreciate it, but I don't even think he realizes he won. He won. It's game on, right? We want to see the confident Wesley So.
Yeah, all I'll say is, clearly, when the pressure is really, really high and the moves have to be made and the clock is ticking, there's a beast inside.
Yeah.
And that's who came out. The clutch defensive moves, sacrificing the rook toward the end to get the 2-pass pawns. And then ultimately, he actually almost blew it. Like, Magnus almost found a configuration at the end there. I don't know if that was really analyzed in great detail, but Wesley thought he had messed it up until he found the knight check to deflect Magnus's knight away from the drawing sequence. That was almost missed there in all of the chaos. So there is a beast inside when it comes to making moves. He just doesn't go to the interview and say, yeah, I'm the man. I woke up. Like, I'm looking forward to game 3, but
I'm gonna swing on him.
We need another game or two like that from Wesley to make the comeback.
100%. Yeah, you can tell some confidence is back there in the interview, right? He's feeling a little bit better. So hopefully he's able to take it to him in this 3rd and 4th game.
Well, that beast inside will now have the black pieces as we get set to the back half of this match. Will we have tiebreakers? What are we in store now that the GOAT, Magnus Carlsen, takes the first move? And is he angry? How feisty will he be? We're going to find out. But right now, it's time for us to throw right back to Oslo, who's going to have the call. Take it away.
All the big questions you just asked, Danny, and we will find the answers to them really soon as Game 3 is about to get underway. But that Game 2 was one of the most thrilling games of chess I have ever witnessed. And Wesley called it coffee house chess style, but it worked in the end. Is this exactly the nudge that he needed to switch up his style?
I think so. He still sounds a bit deflated because he doesn't like losing with the white pieces. But Wesley, you've already given everybody a show. Beating Magnus Carlsen with the black pieces like that, the scramble that we saw at the end, it looked like black was blundering, but he had it all figured out because his pass pawns were rolling. And Wesley, he's put on a show. It's 1-1. Still life left.
Coffee house chess, the top players might frown upon it, but everyone else loves it. We love the pieces flying. We love the sudden swings in evaluation, the twists, the turns, the tactics, pawns flying down the board. Ultimately, Wesley needs to be inspired. He needs to keep exactly that magic that he kind of found in that last few moves in this next game. He has white. He lost with white in the previous one. Magnus doesn't look too thrilled these days either. This next game is critical.
2 big takeaways from game 2. Make the most of the opportunities and don't trust Wesley's body language. We see him, he's back on the board. Again, looking not as confident as we'd expect after that game victory. He starts, it is 1d4, the queen's pawn. Magnus taking a pause, now thinking how he wants to approach this. David, you know Magnus best. How is he? How does he react mentally after a loss like that?
Normally, Magnus gets woken up. We heard about the beast inside Wesley. Magnus really bounces back better than anyone else, I think, in chess history from a defeat. That being said, he is facing Wesley now, a woken Wesley, and Magnus has the black pieces. We see the Nimzo Indian defense, one of the most solid classical openings in chess, and Wesley choosing a branch where he gets the bishop pair early on, so he has something to hold on to long term. It's definitely pressure on Magnus to equalize. Magnus here, he's set up in the most solid way possible, and we'll see how that unfolds.
I'm wondering if he'll strike with c5, because if Magnus is feeling ambitious, he can get into some of these tactical positions where there's deep theory, and I think you don't see this at the highest level very often. But after a loss like that for Magnus Carlsen, why should he take unnecessary risk? If he draws this game, he heads into the 4th game with the white pieces, the first move advantage, and he instead brings knight into e4, and only then plays c5. So these lines, they're well studied, and Wesley, he got his hand on his jaw a little bit. How ambitious will he be? That's my question, because we've learned that he's not even happy with his play after beating Magnus Carlsen.
He's got reasons to be happy about the result of that game, but he also mentioned in the interview that he would be okay taking this to the Armageddon. Now, that was his strategy for set 1 as well, and it didn't work well. This approach of the opening, we see moves are being blitzed out. We're still in opening territory. A big threat on f2, now stopped by Wesley. So pieces are being traded. David, what do you think? Is this a game where Wesley's sticking to what he said in the interview, or will he try for an edge with white?
It feels like he's trying to be super solid here. This variation, this branch of the Nimzo Indian has a notorious drawish tendency. White has a small symbolic advantage because White's bishop is better than the black bishop. White's knight has more potential than the black knight. Ultimately, though, it is a symmetrical pawn structure, and nothing too drastic can go wrong here for black. So, yeah, looks like both players just happy to play solid, mirroring each other's posture here, the body language, just neither looking too energetic. But I would take white every day. I think Wesley, he's just trying to take the sting out of the position, and he's hoping that Magnus is a bit flustered from that last game. That being said, no deep dark forest here.
And Magnus avoided the only opening trap that I know of in this position. So if we can analyze and take it back a few moves, there's one little thing that Magnus needs to avoid, and it's why we encourage people to get their king safe and castle. And right now, simple moves are playing, putting a rook on an open line. And now for Magnus, he doesn't have any concerns. There are no tactics available to Wesley. But if we can just back it up a few moves here, we saw that if he, instead of castling, said, I'm going to force everything off by playing knight to e5, it looks like the bishop should move, and then the queens are traded, and we just get an equal position. But instead of moving the bishop, knight e4 is a clever move, because if you take the bishop, now knight d6 check happens, so I'm actually defending my bishop tactically, and if instead of taking the bishop right away, you make a move like queen c6, just trying to keep the queens on the board, in comes bishop b5, and you take my bishop on b5, I get in knight d6 check with another fork, winning the queen. So castling at that moment was very precise, and it's these little moments in chess at the high level where you have to play the correct continuation, because if you give Wesley that chance, he would have been able to strike in the center. Instead, we see just equality, both players playing for the C and D files, and I think Wesley, he's showing that he's happy to just be equal, make a draw, and try to stabilize the black in the next game.
Yeah, if Magnus can just deal with the problem of this bishop, this stuck bishop, kind of just staring at its own pawn, then Magnus is totally fine. No weaknesses at all in the black position. I'm expecting him maybe even to park the bishop on a safe square like e8. Just get it out the way, trade off with the queens, rooks, as many pieces as possible, and live to fight another day. He's reaching for that piece. That was the only deficiency in his position. He'll bring the rook now to c8, and I think he's close to equality. This one, Wesley's last white in regulation time, could be fizzling out unless he finds something special in the next few moves.
Well, he is putting pressure on the queen, and now the decision will be on Magnus. Will he offer the trade that you were advocating earlier with that f5 square, immediately trying to get into an endgame, or does he move back with the queen to e7? He does decide to keep the queens on the board for now, so looking at lining up the queenside rook on the c line against white's queen, which has just sidestepped any threats along the c file. Magnus goes for the plan, as you said, trying to double up on the d file, get the rooks into play, symmetrical pawn structure. But this advance on the queen side, the a3, b4 pawns, does that give, is this, as we like to say, more equal for white than black?
The optics are good for Wesley, and that's not just because he's got his glasses on and he's keeping them on, but he has already control of the c-file. His pawns are more advanced. He can kick the enemy knight away if he pushes the b-pawn even further. His knight on d2, it's got room for improvement. It can go up to e4 and then over to c5. But you can't actually pile up pressure on the pieces. So it is better for white. You're kind of playing for two results here. But if Magnus continues the way he's been playing and is able to trade some pieces, he will have no problems whatsoever. But that's why Wesley, he brought his bishop back to e2. He's going to reroute that bishop to f3 at the correct moment. His queen on b2 is well placed. A slight edge to Wesley So. I think that he can play safely for an advantage. And if Magnus plays perfectly, we've seen the accuracy levels being high here. A draw is the likely outcome between two of the best players in the world.
Yeah, we talked about stylistically who did the previous game favour. We were unsure. It was just too messy. Neither player too comfortable, but this is well within both players' comfort zones in this one. Magnus, he's fine in these positional battles. You can trust his body language, I think, right now, because he feels like he's kind of evaded the worst. Yes, maybe one or two small questions to answer, but he should ultimately be okay with black. And Wesley, meanwhile, this is right up his alley. Minimal risk, no sting in the position. And he can massage this advantage. He can try to make use of that extra space that's been initiated with those pawn pushes on the queen side. White's got the better minor pieces long term, but look at the rooks indirectly now. They're almost staring at each other, and it's likely those pieces will get traded off. If those all disappear, it's really hard to imagine the winning chances for white. You can see as well the speed with which they've been playing now pretty far into the middle game. They're both much more confident than in the previous crazy battle.
Also getting those nerves to settle down after what just happened in game two. Absolute chaos. And the more we see, the more games of Magnus Carlsen that one would study, you understand that it's almost impossible to outclass Magnus strategically. In these slow fights, slow grinds, even from equal position, he's the one who almost invariably comes out on top. So if you really want those winning chances, you have to somehow drag him into those forests of complications, into those chaotic messes that we saw in game two earlier. And right now, it looks like that's not going to be the narrative in this one. There are ideas of that knight from d2 jumping forward to c4, the b-pawn perhaps moving forward to b5, that bishop from e2 landing on f3, a nicer diagonal. And with black, if Magnus does equalize this completely, and this does go into a draw, I think he's got reasons to be happy. Despite losing game two with white, he starts game four with white, and it's not going to stop him from making his chances in that one.
Playing the odds, getting the white pieces in a one game remaining in regulation. Of course, Magnus will be happy about that, but he's, I don't think, happy about his play overall. We know from Magnus, we've heard from him over the years, when he loses a game, especially when he feels like he's not playing at his best, that's when he's most disturbed. And for Wesley So, calm game here. I just want to note that it's easy to forget that these players, and particularly Wesley, have played a ton of chess in recent days. This is the 8th and final day here at the Champions Chess Tour. In terms of just rated 15 minutes base time for each player, Wesley's played 30 of those games, and that doesn't include Armageddon. So they're probably exhausted at this stage. We're in the 8th and final day, no days off for these players. They had an easier day on the 4th day when some people were playing the survival stage, but then they're right back to it into the semifinals, and it's exhausting. It really is exhausting playing this high-level chess, and we'll see who has enough left in the tank.
And interestingly, it was these two players who managed to get a bit of time off in that final round-robin stage because they did finish at the top of the leaderboard at the end of that. But for Magnus and Wesley, so much on the line. 200,000 for the winner. The second place drops down to 100K. And that last move by Magnus, taking control of the C5 square, is fighting against Emma Wesley's knight jump. We were talking about the C4 square, but the knight could hop onto the center and then to that C5 point, which now has been defended by Magnus. How do you feel he's evaluating this position? Is he thinking of this as something that is equal or something that he still needs to defend?
Yeah, I've been around Magnus enough to know that he's not too bothered about this position. Probably his words would be, yes, I'm slightly worse. Yes, I'm slightly cramped, I'm suffering, but it's holdable. And I think right now a draw is pretty much what he's dreaming of. He wants to move on to the next one, get the chance at the white pieces again, despite how the last game went. But yeah, this last move, it's just good strategy. Black has a light squared bishop, so put pawns on dark squares. That way you cover both colour complexes. And Wesley manoeuvring around with his knight. We're looking at the rooks. Potentially they'll be traded now on the next few turns. And yeah, I think Magnus is feeling very confident.
Should I grab the Hoover, or do you want to grab it?
I'll grab the vacuum, Robert.
Well, we're about to see all of these pieces be traded. You can keep the rooks on the board. That's the bit of good news if you're trying to play for a win. But if White takes with this rook on d1, Magnus can put his rook on the d file. Okay, Wesley takes with the bishop because the knight can't currently move. But if Black slides the queen on over and protects that rook, then the knight can move out of the way, and we could see further trades, which should mean a draw. Without pieces remaining on the board, it's hard to attack any of the pawns remaining. There aren't really weaknesses in either side's camp. I think a draw would be a fair and likely result at this stage, and with the amount of time they have left, it's really difficult for me to see any winning chances for either side.
Feels like the calm after the storm, essentially. Both players just need a bit of a bit more time to just compose themselves after the madness. Imagine their heart rates in that previous game, just through the roof. And there we go. The queen slides across to b7, the safer square from Magnus Carlsen, defending his rook. Everything's covered. The black knight will jump out the way next, and yeah, they'll be cleaning those pieces off the board. Too symmetrical right now. No pass pawns ever incoming, no weaknesses in either camp. As level, as balanced as you get, pretty much in chess.
Wesley, so trying to get closer to that Armageddon where things will get more random. It will be about the battle for the bids and who gets the black pieces. But before that, there will be a game 4, and Magnus will have the white pieces. Right now, both players playing cautiously, trying to just get their nervous system back into control. It was not only exciting for the fans, for the commentators, what we just witnessed in the earlier game, but for these two players playing that chess, especially down to those seconds, those last few moments, absolute insanity on the board. And right now for Wesley, he's having a think about perhaps how to force matters right now. Is there a way that you can actually get the trades going really quickly? Wesley pauses a bit.
I think that for Black's next turn is going to be moving the knight out of the way and getting all those trades zapping anyway. So I don't think that Wesley needs to force it. I think neither side can make progress because we have a symmetrical structure. And if you're going to play for more than just the equality, you need to figure out what side of the board you're stronger on. And neither side is stronger in any direction. There are so few pieces remaining on this board, so few open files, just the two of them here, that it looks likely the Black knight is going to jump out of the way. And once that knight jumps out of the way, the rooks come off the board and okay, well, Wesley can think about sliding his rook on over to the g4 square. That would threaten checkmate in 1. But I feel like that's kind of all you're threatening. And once that's stopped, maybe you're just being a little bit tunneled over on the king side.
Yeah, let's jump in and show this, because I don't think anyone was expecting Wesley to suddenly get ambitious in such a dry position. But rook to c4, at least one idea, and at least it will scare Magnus slightly, force Magnus to go into a think, which he does, we see on the camera. The black knight jumping out the way. This is the consistent follow-up to Magnus's plan. He wants to get these rooks off as soon as possible. A rook trade. The rook's disappearing. This is a dead draw. No chance we'll see this one continue for much longer. But the ambitious move here for Wesley would be to slide across, threaten the checkmate on g7. And Robert, I guess you're suggesting just push the pawn to g6. And yes, there's a couple of dark squared holes, but black doesn't have to worry too much. The white knight's never creeping in anytime soon. White doesn't have a dark squared bishop to profit from this slightly airy formation for black. And yeah, I'm struggling to see a follow-up. If the white queen ever dives in, suddenly you forget, whoops, I've left myself vulnerable on the back rank and actually no threats against the black monarch at all. So it just feels like a one-idea trick, which doesn't have too much substance behind it. So I think Magnus, after a bit of time to convince himself, will most likely continue his plan.
It does make Magnus think a little bit. So it's not perhaps that clear to him. And if you just keep the position on the board, and we're talking about, and we see this happen, that how can White actually continue with the pressure if the rook was to slide down? And look at that. Wesley shows ambition in the position. He doesn't immediately trade off, and Magnus doesn't create further dark square weaknesses. Perhaps he wasn't sure about a knight jump to e5 or eventually the h-pawn moving forward. But he keeps the position much more solid. He puts the knight on g6, so blocking the attack, and Wesley, bishop c2. I feel like threats are on the board. This isn't as balanced as we were first thinking it to be.
But I can't decide who this is favoring, and sometimes when you play for a win, you jeopardize playing for a loss. And if Black just goes queen c7 here, you do take the knight and hurt Black's kingside structure, but I'll throw in a check, forcing the queens off the board. And the reason why I could see this, and Magnus plays queen c7, perhaps even a possibility that White gets in trouble, that a3 pawn, that's quickly going to be targeted. And all of White's pieces are over on the king side. Now we're getting a double-edged type of position where Black's pawn structure is worse, but Black has easier access to the weaknesses for White. So you have to be very careful here for both sides, but I think in particular for Wesley, we know how strong Magnus is in the endgame.
Yeah, this is really brave from Wesley. So he's still playing really fast right now. Wesley up almost 3 minutes on the clock. But after a really stodgy opening, queen's coming off, Robert's line on the board. After a really slow beginning to this game, Wesley's taken risks, and we've headed directly to these closing stages, the end game now. But yeah, knowing the opponent, Magnus Carlsen, rook and bishop tend to do better than rook and knight on such an open board as well. Yes, Black has deficiencies in the kingside structure, isolated central pawn for Black, but that's far less relevant. White's queenside is collapsing, so I actually think it's Wesley who might have to show accuracy right now. Black's next moves will be automatic. And for Wesley, you need to find ways to drop the white knight into the center, activate, repurpose the white rook. Anyone's game, still a 3-result endgame.
If the rooks come off the board, advantage Wesley, and that's what he would like. So knight e5 does attack this pawn on g6, but one move, rook sliding on the c file, offering a trade. Without rooks, that light square bishop for Black can't attack anything at all, and then the damaged pawn structure will be a downside. So I think that for Magnus, he should just go after the a pawn. We may see further liquidation, and perhaps it's not too difficult for Wesley, but he's the one who needs to be careful if either of these players do.
In a bishop versus knight complex, it's often about whether you've got pawns just on one side of the board or both sides. If you've got it on both sides, it favors the side with the bishop. If you've got pawns only on one side of the board, it favors the side with the knight. And in this case, for Wesley, he needs to be a little precise in this endgame. He is playing actively, puts the pressure Magnus before going for that pawn on a3, defends his own pawn on g6, and this gives Wesley the chance to offer a rook trade from c4. And you were against a rook trade for White in this position. But is there another alternative for Wesley? Because rook c3 or rook a1 is now a big threat. And as I say it, I also spot that you've got the idea of going rook to d4, the central line of the board, and then looking at ideas of landing on that 8th rank with a pin.
Yeah, rook is good for White, just to be clear, because now Black can't attack anything. And I feel like Black's damaged pawn structure, not great in an endgame, especially if you trade both the rooks and the minor pieces. You don't want double pawns in most endgames. And I think after rook c4, Magnus is probably either evaluated, I can trade rooks, and there's not enough material for Wesley to attack my potentially loose pawns, or he's going to try to keep the pawns on the board and go after the queen side. But rook c4 is definitely the move I'd play for Wesley.
So you'd go with rook c4. What about you? Would you decide to keep the rooks or trade? Before I ask, Wesley answers he is going for the rook trade, and Magnus accepts it.
Yeah, I'm glad he had to make that decision, not me. But it is instructive. We were just talking about which pieces you want on the board, off the board. These top players, that's always going through their minds. They're thinking long term. They're not just thinking, today, these are my jobs, these are my chores. They're thinking, what's my life plan in 5 years' time, 10 years' time? They're looking deep into the future. And yeah, now rook's off the board. It's pretty much knight versus bishop dynamic. Usually, as we mentioned, that would favor the bishop with pawns on both flanks. But here, all of White's pawns, or most of White's pawns on dark squares, unattackable, unassailable. And ultimately, it feels like this one should be level. I'm liking how White's king could maybe reach the center. White's knight has a beautiful outpost, but it's just not enough here. It's too few weaknesses for either side as Wesley pushes forward with his pawn.
And that's an interesting decision, because traditionally we'd see the doubled g-pawn and we'd be like, that's a weakness in Black's camp. But Wesley, with that last move, is actually helping Magnus get rid of one of those weaknesses.
I think he was concerned that Magnus's king, especially after kicking the knight out of c4, would get to d6 and up the board so quickly and over to the queen side that he perhaps needed to trade pawns so his own king will go to the center and fight for some key squares. So I think both sides, they're playing this extremely accurately. These players do make very few mistakes. So even though we've been talking about ideas for Magnus, ideas for Wesley, neither side is budging.
And we often talk about how Magnus just creates magic in endgames. Do we see any hope of that happening in such a position?
It's not impossible if the Black King somehow wiggles its way into White's camp. If the Black King gets more active than its counterparts, certainly Black will be having the better chances right now. But yeah, it's hard to imagine. I think Wesley at some point in the near future will push the white e-pawn up one square and actually form a barrier. The Black King will not be able to step past the 6th rank at all. So yeah, it feels like White will be able to build a fortress here. Despite the fact I've seen Magnus win countless of these endgames, this is unlikely to be one of them.
And Wesley said his favorite movie is Lord of the Rings, so Thou Shalt Not Pass is a perfect moment for him, and he should do that. He should just clarify, end the game on the spot. You don't really want this to continue. Although, with Magnus getting the white pieces in the next game, it could tire him out a little bit. And so for Wesley, he knows that this game is a draw. Not too much risk for him to just make some more moves. Both players have so much time, though, that I don't see them getting into trouble.
Yeah, we mentioned that this tournament is a marathon. Who do you think has the better stamina? It's been such a long week, long 8 days, actually, for both of them. If it does get down to this final game, assuming this one is going to be a draw now, I'm expecting Wesley to push his pawn forward in the center. If this one's a draw, if the next one's a draw, Armageddon, can Wesley take it?
I think that's a dream for Wesley, right? To get to Armageddon, to make things more random. And you said stamina a factor, energy a factor. So who is more fit right now? And I wonder if that means that maybe a chess boxing match between the two would decide. We saw an earlier interview where Magnus said it would take $10 million for an offer to for him to go into chess boxing. I think that's a fair price to see that.
Yeah. I mean, if I had $10 million to spare, pretty sure I need 9,000, no, 9 million. Then yeah.
If anyone's watching who's got $10 million, that's one that I think everyone would want to see. Magnus Carlsen in chess boxing. But I think I agree with you, David. Stamina, energy is such a factor right now. And for both players to have this calm game, it's perhaps exactly what they need for this match to progress further. Because it's not only game by game, right? It's also what happens during the game. Mm-hmm. Game 2 was such a... I'm struggling for a word, but something just takes that energy out of you, that physical, that emotional energy out of you with the decisions that you have to make.
It was a barn burner. It was a melee, and neither side, wants to expend that much energy when there are more games to come. And I'm actually looking at this position with keen interest because Wesley should bring his knight back, as David was saying, make sure that the Black King can't enter. But if Black gets a free move, that bishop is actually going to go all the way down the board to f1 to start pestering White's king side pawns, and the Black King will start entering on the queen side. So Wesley does need to be a little bit careful here, but if he exercises that caution and brings his knight back, the game should be a draw because then the Black King cannot enter. But you could see Wesley, he knows that this is a moment where he cannot take his foot off the pedal.
Yeah, he's wondering whether to take a risk, whether to go in with the White King. But if it becomes a race, if Black's bishop does come in and start picking off White's pawns on light squares on the king side, then Black's bishop will be superior to the White knight, simply with pawns running on both flanks. So he does drop back the knight. That shake of the head was acknowledgement that this one is going to be a dead draw any moment now. The White knight is the one forming the barrier with the pawns, and thou shalt not pass for either side.
That knight on c3 and that pawn on b4 just taking away so many key squares for the Black King to move forward, unless we see Black striking with the a-pawn moving up 2 steps. But perhaps White just keeps the tension as it is. If there is an offer of a pawn trade on the queen side, you want to keep the formation as it is, not allowing Magnus's king forward. Whenever I see an endgame and I see Magnus on one side of it, you still have to be so careful until the very end. One minor inaccuracy and everything turns around.
The good news for Wesley is it's almost impossible to make an inaccuracy, it would seem, because that king, you could let it get a few free turns. It's not going anywhere. White has a fortress. Magnus famously doesn't believe in fortress. He says it as a jest, I think. And you see Wesley's not even looking at the board anymore because now that he's got his knight on c3 and those pawns in the dark squares, the bishop can't attack any of them. It's inherently limited to whatever on the light squares. The king, for Black, can't enter anymore. So now it's shuffle time.
That's really instructive. Just place your pawns on the opposite color of your opponent's bishop. Make sure that there is no entry point. And now the king just moves around, and we can see that black can offer trades. White can just keep the tension as it is, and it will head down to a draw. Do you think Wesley at this moment is already thinking about his game 4 strategy?
Potentially. He's at least trying to conserve energy. I think he's just looking into the future and maybe even wondering about that Armageddon if he gets that far. This one, yeah, there's 0 life. Look at White, everything on dark squares. He's playing checkers. And unfortunately for Magnus Carlsen right now, this is a deadlock. Just no way to break the barrier. But yeah, he must be planning ahead now, Wesley. So he's still got plenty of time on the clock. 5 minutes is just more than enough right now.
And when we talk about trying to break a barrier, we're looking at pawn breaks from black here. And there are 2 that come to mind, right? Like the A pawn can move forward 2 steps to A5, or the G pawn can move forward to G5. Break that down for us. How should Wesley react to make sure that black's king doesn't get more activity if a break was to arrive?
Yeah, I think just ignore everything. Just leave everything. Don't touch it. Sorry that I was just playing around trying to figure out if there was anything at all black could try, but the answer is no. I don't know if Magnus will even try to test. Just keep the white king, just move back and forth, back and forth. You'll never get Zugzwang because I think black won't be able to create enough threats.
It's a fortress. Magnus will believe in it if he doesn't already, because there is nothing he can do. And that black king may go on over to the F5 square and then try to go into G4, like you go there, and you're going down towards the pawns, and the white king just steps back and defends them. So the control of the dark squares is completely in Wesley's favor, and he's shuffling back and forth. Magnus very much doing the same. I don't see any inroads, and I believe both players, they'd be well served with a draw in the near future.
Every day they're shuffling. That black king's going to shuffle as well. Not much to do, though. White's king will always block out, shoulder off its counterpart. The black king can come 1 square forward, but no further. And, yeah, Wesley doing the right thing. Once the black king is distracted on the other flank.
Find a way to repeat.
Yeah, there we go. It's a draw, a handshake. And very level game, this one.
Very peaceful draw, this one. From start to finish, the players just calming down after the chaos of game 2. Magnus Carlsen with the black pieces holds the draw. Wesley from the start never really got an edge. He pushed a little with some ideas, but never anything to worry about for black.
Hyper-accurate chess. That's what's on display here in the Champions Chess Tour Finals title match. Magnus Carlsen, he's got a little more pep in his step, and that's not just because he talked to Pep Guardiola the other day. It's because he won set 1. Here in set 2, it's tied 1-1, and Tania, he gets the white pieces in game 4.
And that will be the final rapid game. If it ends in a tie, we will have the bidding Armageddon. But the big question right now, will Magnus Carlsen try to wrap it up with white? Will he get ambitious, or will he have the same strategy as Wesley of trying to mix things up, go into chaotic grounds with Armageddon? My gut feeling is Magnus with white will take his chances. But anyway, this game 3, there were no chances for either sides.
Minimal chances. I just wanted to highlight one brief moment where Wesley did try something. He tried to spice it up, but Magnus Carlsen had all the answers and quickly shut down the game. He quickly guided it towards safety. And it was here where Wesley, with a bit of misdirect, he had been playing very quietly, very slowly. Looked like he was ready to already offer a draw, but suddenly he threw a spanner in the works. Rook to c4, trying to slide across, and he even threatened checkmate. The queen, rook lined up against the black king, but Magnus Carlsen is too strong a defender. White only has 2 attacking pieces, not sufficient to crash through. And after knight to g6, this was the key move. Queen to c7, and after bishop takes knight, what we call a Zwischenzug, an intermediate move, not taking back, allowing white another move to continue the initiative. First, forcing the queens off the board, no attack any longer, and a dead level endgame.
And it was held with no problems from either side, but a great awareness of both players. For Wesley, just to challenge Magnus for a move, and for Magnus saying, I'm going to parry that threat, trade the queens, and no risk ahead. So I think that both players played a great game. I would not be surprised that it was like 99% accuracy from both of them. High-level chess here in Toronto.
Chess is a simple game. When 2 of the best players play, no one makes a mistake, it ends in a draw. But the next one is going to be a big one. And we saw after game 2, fans in Toronto in the fan zone celebrated Wesley's big win. And we are going to check in with the fans and with James Canty. James, that was a slow game 3. I hope everyone got their drinks and are ready for the action.
Oh, of course, yeah. I actually went to sleep on the way here watching the game. Actually, I was walking but sleep at the same time. Got here, people was napping, talking about what they gonna eat for lunch and stuff. You hear the conversation back there. The game was absolutely boring, but at the same time, it is an Armageddon now. We have more chess. We're gonna have another game, so that's gonna be hype. And people out here having a good time, having drinks, and looking at this game and this match. So we got a game 4, Tanya. So we're happy.
Oh, so excited in the studio as well, because our big question is Magnus going to go all out with white, or will it go to Armageddon? Prediction there, James.
Yeah, prediction-wise, I actually saw that Wesley was like, oh, I want to go to Armageddon here. Let's try to get into it. Feels like he's a little bit more confident, but if Magnus is able to turn it up just a little bit, we may actually see a decisive result in the 4th round. I'm going to say we actually are going to see a decisive result in this 4th game here. I'm going to say Magnus is winning. Yeah, I'll say Magnus wins. What do you think, Tanya?
Well, James, I'm going to save Tanya from that question because I'm wondering, how's your tongue? I mean, do you still feel that spice from the challenge with Levy?
Yeah, in fact, I did. Yeah, it was pretty bad. We had medics on staff, so they took me in. They took my vitals, make sure I was good for the day, because Levy almost died as well, right? So it's fine. We did not have to, like, call out on chess.com and get them in trouble or anything because we have insurance with them, so we're good. So they paid our medical bills, and we're good to go, So it did hurt. It did hurt. It did hurt.
And James, I'm glad it was you who dropped the B word, not me. Do you think this next game will be as boring as the previous one? You predicted Magnus to win. How do you think he's going to do it?
It's probably maybe with a C4. C4, a lot of weird things happen with C4, many ways that you can go. D4 is fun too as well. E4, okay, they say best by test, but E4 hasn't been scoring as much as we would like it to, or as much as fans at home like to see E4 with decisive games and openness and stuff like that. But maybe we'll see some C4. Maybe we'll see Knight F3 and see a Catalan like you like to play, David, and put us all to sleep. But at the same time, I think we will have ourselves, not an Armageddon, a decisive result by Magnus in the 4th round, 4th game.
James, you just predicted every possible opening with white.
I mean, hey, something's going to happen there, Tanya. We don't know how, but we just know it is. And people at home actually feel probably the same way. We do want to see an Armageddon, but for some reason, I just feel like we're going to see that decisive result by Magnus.
All right, we will find out very soon. James, we'll check in with you later. Have a fun time there.
Thank you.
James Canty in the fan zone, and there's more fun news coming up for the fans across the world. Magnus Carlsen is not only defending his Champions Chess Tour title right now, but later he will be defending his Rapid and Blitz World Championship title, as he will be in the World Rapid and Blitz starting December 26th. Mark your calendars, and right now you got to stick around because the action's getting hot in this city.
I'm here with Magnus Carlsen, world #1, and to many, greatest chess player of all time. We're going to ask him a few questions. I'm going to name a sport. You have to tell me the greatest of all time. Sounds good?
Yeah.
Basketball.
LeBron James.
Soccer.
Messi.
I agree with both. Baseball.
Barry Bonds.
What did he say? Okay. Football, like American football.
Tom Brady, I guess.
Okay, yeah, good one. Tennis.
Djokovic.
Was it always Djokovic for you? Or you thought maybe?
No, it was after the Australian Open thing that he became the greatest for me.
Was it Nadal before or Federer?
Probably Federer, but I always identified more with the way that Nadal plays.
Golf.
Tiger.
Fair. Poker.
Doug Brunson.
That's a unique one. Chess.
Garry Kasparov.
Are you allowed to say yourself?
I don't know if I'm allowed, but I think Garry is the best of all time still.
Chess boxing.
Aman Hamilton.
I agree. We're gonna play this or that. Would you rather go on a cruise or a road trip?
Road trip.
Comedy or thriller?
Comedy.
Coffee or tea?
Tea, but only slightly. Preferably neither.
How do you get energized?
The sun.
Cats or dogs?
Cats. But I like dogs too.
It's like this or that is a little bit tough with you. You like everything. Shower or bath?
Oh, shower for sure.
Okay.
I don't have the patience to take baths.
Are you a morning person or a night owl?
Night owl for sure.
Would you rather get on a phone call or text message?
Text, probably.
I feel like the answer for you is neither. I feel like it's just...
Usually, yes.
Just go. Sunrise or sunset?
Sunrise.
Winter or summer?
Summer.
Sauna or ice bath?
Both.
Okay.
That's what you do in Norway, that you go in the sauna and then you take an ice bath. And then you go back in the sauna and you do that a few times. It's really nice.
How many beers would it take for you to drink for me to beat you in a classical chess game?
That's a very difficult question, because I'd probably sober up during the game, so I'd probably have to keep drinking. Probably start with 20 and take it from there.
20, okay. What's the size of the cup?
Pints.
Wow, okay, 20. Name your price if you have to chess box.
$10 million.
Do you prefer to play chess on a computer, over the board, or on your phone?
I rarely play on my phone. I would say I prefer to play on the computer.
In your entire career, have you ever had a day where you went, I think this guy might be as good as me in chess?
No. Well, I mean, not you know, since, not the last 10 years, for sure.
Okay. Has it ever been, this guy might be kind of close to me if I have a bad day?
Yeah, I would say Fabio at his best was very close in classical, for sure.
My other question was going to be, who do you think is the second best chess player in the world? So, I suppose...
Yeah, I think Fabiano Caruana is the second best player. Yeah.
Thank you, Magnus, for sitting down with us and doing these rapid-fire questions. Now get out of here.
And a big congratulations to the winner of our AirThings device. It's Lucille. Congrats. And you get an AirThing signed by the GOAT himself, Magnus Carlsen. It is coming your way to help you keep your air quality in check, so you can play amazing chess as well. Also, amazing photo. Also, really cute dog there. And speaking of the GOAT himself, Magnus Carlsen will be getting ready with the white pieces for the upcoming final fourth rapid game of the second set. Magnus, will he go for more? That is the big question. Game 3 did end peacefully in a draw. Not too much drama, and to get into the mindset of what the players are bringing on, Kaya asked some questions to Magnus.
Still tied after a draw in this game. Was that a good result for you now, Magnus, after losing game 2?
Yeah, it was okay.
We saw you very angry after game 2. How difficult is it to come into game 3 there and just get a game going?
It's okay. I mean, it's a new game. Obviously, it was. Yeah, game 2 was not so good, but yeah, you could sort of see it coming, and that my play in game 1 in time travel was really shaky, and this time again. I mean, he did a good job to create serious imbalances. I thought my position was a little bit better than it actually was, and then it got completely out of control.
How do you feel about your play today overall?
Pretty poor, but still, got a good chance.
And game 4 coming up here with the white pieces. Wesley been very open that he thinks it's an advantage for him to take it to Armageddon. What do you think for your sake?
We'll see.
Do you have a big plan for game 4 here with the white pieces?
We'll see.
We'll see. All right. Well, we'll see what happens in game 4, Magnus. We'll have the white pieces. Will it be Armageddon or will it be decided? Back to you guys.
Magnus Carlsen not giving any of his strategy away for the upcoming game 4, but he did mention that he felt that the play was shaky during time trouble there, Robert.
It was shaky in time trouble, but he is not shaky with the white pieces. He did his James Harden interview walk away, and he looks like a vintage James Harden. Win rate at 64%, the best in the Champions Chess Tour. He's got 8 wins with the white pieces. Why not make it 9? So Magnus Carlsen with the white pieces, a dangerous, dangerous man.
Yeah, Magnus with white is probably the most dangerous player in world chess, but it's not just that. Magnus will get to dictate the nature of play. If he can, I think Magnus will take as much risk out while still applying some pressure. And for Wesley, that's psychologically tough. A draw for him would be great, get to the Armageddon, but it's not going to be given to him.
We saw Wesley take these big risks with the black pieces in game 2, and Magnus was white in that one. But now, given the different dynamic of the match, are we expecting a more cautious approach from Wesley and not go all out?
I think that Magnus was actually a little bit too passive in his opening choice in that second game. And then Wesley's looking at the position like, okay, you now have to save your bishop. I'm going to win a pawn. So for Magnus Carlsen, I think he'll play something a little bit more mainline, not taking huge risks, but at least playing something he's more familiar and thus more comfortable with.
He did start with the king's pawn opening in game 2, and it's going to be big questions to Magnus. What will his approach be right now? Does he want to take it to Armageddon, or does he want to make the most of the white pieces? There's so much on the line for these two players. There is, of course, the $200,000 for the winner. But more than that, just the glory of being the undisputed king of the Champions Chess Tour. What are we hoping for? We always want more chess.
More chess. We want the Armageddon. We want, maybe, I'll whisper it quietly, Wesley to strike back, and we get another reset, we get another set, we get more chess, more action.
I'm not rooting for anybody, but who doesn't love extra chess? Let's get overtime. Let's get more and more chess. And I think these players really are just showing a tremendous fight, so how can we not be happy?
Magnus there in his interview with Kaya, he definitely looked a bit angry with himself for what he had let slip. The match could have been over by now had he not lost that game.
That's what they say, right? Accidents always happen when you're nearing home, when you're in that final stages. And Magnus, he probably had that finishing line in sight. He'd already won with black. That's a huge stepping stone. And I mean, what more could he have asked for? But suddenly getting that knockback with white, it's anyone's game now. Magnus, he cannot write this one off. He still has a real fight on his hands.
That was a big, big wake-up call by Wesley, punching with the black pieces in game 2, and Wesley gets the black pieces one more time in this final game. A much more confident Wesley walking in.
It could be his final game here at the Champions Chess Tour Finals, right? This is his life on the line, and for Wesley, so he's been so solid, as James likes to say, but it's been shaky in the finals. That's what happens when you're playing Magnus Carlsen.
After that game 1 loss, this is the most that Wesley could have hoped for. Striking back with black, a slow, solid game in game 3, keeping everything under control, never coming in any kind of pressure. Wesley there would just, he's not happy with the H-pawn.
Yeah, it's hurting my ears because he's slamming that down. You think he's going to use Harry the H-pawn in this game?
Quite possibly. He has done in the past. And
it was uneven.
Yeah.
Ooh, it was uneven, Wesley so says.
Will we see that?
H7 pawn.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it gave us trouble in like a few rounds before.
It was
showed
uneven,
up. Yeah, uneven. Okay.
Yeah.
It's good now?
Yeah, like it was making a rattle.
Okay, sounds good. All of a sudden it was showing up as a queen.
Oh, okay.
But we caught it like between the games, so.
Yeah, I put it there on G7. Thanks.
Wesley knocking the pieces.
He knows there's a microphone nearby. He's
he was a fan favorite until he did all this. It's hurting everybody's ears, Wesley. Come on, give us a break.
Replace it with the queen. Can I replace my rook with the queen?
No.
That's not allowed, Wesley.
I think we're gonna all catch that. And then it'll show up at the queen.
Well, Magnus does show up with some food in his mouth right now, and he will be ready to go. Wesley there knocking the pieces. Will we see some knockout blows being played out on the chessboard as well? And in just a few seconds, we will have the first moves. The players getting ready. The glasses come back on. And we will have handshakes and moves just on the board, and it's go time. Again, for Magnus, what will be his first move? Will it be the best by test 1e4? A lot of adjusting going on this time.
Yeah. And we have the handshake. Which pawn will Magnus Carlsen push? It's the queen's pawn, the D pawn. And Wesley reacts instantly by bringing his knight out. Much more classical stuff. Magnus might have lost his last opportunity to play 1b3 on the Champions Chess Tour this season with white. But here we go. One of the main lines of the Queen's Gambit. The Berlin of 1d4, as we call it, where often queens get traded off very early. Magnus Carlsen defeated Fabiano Caruana in this opening just a couple of days ago, but this time he pushes his knight to the more normal square, not the central square that he used against Fabiano. And this is a very well-known position, Robert.
Yeah, for here, Wesley so brings his bishop out. White can take this bishop on e6 at any moment. But first, Magnus goes bishop d2, and to my eyes, that's a bit of an odd move because white wants to castle the king towards the queen side and get a rook check along the d-file, but that bishop will block the rook's path. So bishop d2, a very interesting move here, just kind of throwing a curveball at Wesley.
Yeah, again, it feels like one of those openings, Magnus Carlsen. He's just testing the opponent. This is modern chess. Often the top players, they study these types of openings, these forcing lines with queens coming off, center opening. They study them for tens of hours, hundreds of hours even. And often they know everything under the sun in the main lines. But if you test them with these small ideas, these odd-looking ideas, white's bishop on a really passive square, then actually the opponents do have scope to go wrong. That's what happened when Magnus met Fabiano a few days ago. And look at that, Wesley just peering off at the opponent. How much does Magnus know? Wesley has got to assume he's walking into some preparation. So just surviving these next few moves will be step one for Wesley So.
First question on the board by Magnus Carlsen as he plays a non-standard move in this position. Definitely an opening that Wesley knows so well, is so familiar with, but yet it makes him pause and burn some time on the clock. It's all about finding the right setup for your pieces here with black. And also, we shouldn't be fooled by the queens being traded off. This isn't Magnus being non-ambitious or just going into an Armageddon. He wants to try to grind down this endgame. He's going to play this out till the very end.
It's a really clever move, actually. If we dive into the specifics a bit, it does take away one of black's key resources with the dark square bishop, and the threat, if you want to call it that, or at least the idea of knight takes bishop from white taking this bishop near the black king side, that's not out of the question either. So he just plays a tricky move order. Wesley develops his knight. The e4 pawn can be grabbed. The white king can castle queenside if he wants, but he first takes this pawn e4, and he has equalized the material, but Magnus still has the right to castle, while Wesley does not.
Yeah, that black king could come under heavy fire. Yes, the queens are off. There's not going to be direct checkmate attacks. But if you imagine white castling, the white rooks centralizing, black's king will be caught in no man's land. So right now, it's looking very, very level. It's just the lack of castling rights for black. But there is also a bit of a threat of white's knight going back where it came from. If white's ever able to trade off white's knight for black's light squared bishop, a long-term advantage. It's all about the bishop pair here, symmetrical pawn structure, just as we saw pretty much in the previous game. This one, risk of it fizzling out, but only if Wesley is accurate. It's definitely onus on black here to defend this one. Magnus, he's trying to play for two results. He's trying to take all risk out while massaging a small but stable long-term advantage.
And we might see Wesley on the next move fighting that very threat that, David, you pointed out too. He does reach for the H-pawn, so keeping control of the G5 square. Now there's no more knight jumping, trying to grab that bishop pair, which in this position, especially being so open with pawns on both sides, will really count for something. So with knight G5 out of the question now, It's time for Magnus to decide where does he want to place his king. If you go castling on the queen's side, you have to calculate lines of giving up the a2 pawn. But Magnus also has the idea that he can just continue with development, and it still feels he'll be the one to control the central lines first. Take out that bishop, castle on the king side, looks like the safer option to me.
And both of his bishops can get to the longest diagonal. So his bishop on d2, the dark square bishop, it can just go one square to the left-hand side, that way, and go to c3 on the long diagonal. The light square bishop can step in front of the king right now, and then also go to f3. So both of his bishops will be on good squares, and I think he should delay his decision of where to castle, keep Wesley on his toes, so that Wesley doesn't know which side of the board to focus on.
Yeah, Wesley really shouldn't even relax too soon in this game, because these positions are deceptive. I've been on the wrong end against these top grandmasters. Magnus has ground me down multiple times. These top players, they always look for resources. No matter how drawish it looks, you cannot assume you'll get the draw. And definitely small ideas here for white. We're not seeing much for black. Not too many active plans here. Wesley still needs 3 or 4 things to happen. He needs to get the black king safe, needs to get the black dark square bishop out, connect his rooks, bring them to the center. But there we go. Robert's move. This is the ideal home, the ideal perch for white's dark squared bishop. Look at the pressure it exerts on the long diagonal, and lines towards the black king. The center is so open that this is a tactical type of endgame. And still, I feel like this one will be much more exciting than the previous battle we saw. Still chances for white.
I refer to these types of positions as queenless middle games because there are attacking chances. When I hear endgame, I think pawn races. Is someone going to be able to promote? What trades should we offer? The question of the trades is a good one. Black can't easily trade pieces because the king is in the center. There's no right to castle any longer. White, on the other hand, can castle queenside, put a rook directly in the path of the black king. That light square bishop can go out to e2 or d3 to protect the knight in the center. I think black's choices are harder here, and that dark square bishop for Wesley, the bishop on f8, can't easily develop either because the white bishop on c3 is staring at that pawn on g7. So difficult decisions ahead for Wesley So.
Well, he does take one. He does line up the rook on the c-file. So discouraging Magnus for now, at least to go castle on the queen side, because that would pin that white bishop on c3 once the king and the rook are lined up, allowing Wesley to finish his own development of the dark squared bishop. So with longside castling out of the question right now, the big thing for Magnus is to decide where he wants to place the other bishop. How does he decide to get it into the diagonal that you were earlier alluding to? Does he simply put it in front of the king, try to get his king to safety on the king side? How do you see this progressing?
Yeah, Robert was advocating this bishop maneuver. Looks very natural. What else for white here? I guess you could try to come out to b5, put some pressure on, but you're not really threatening anything. And yeah, I'm advocating this bishop move too. Yeah, just to point out, we cannot really castle right now because at the very least for black, there will be ideas of bringing the bishop out and putting some pressure on this pinned piece. Also hanging a2 if Wesley's feeling greedy, just like he did a bit earlier today to grab a pawn. But yeah, I'm expecting Magnus to keep his options open, just improve this piece, land it on this long diagonal, just in case it becomes open later. Magnus, he is the one in move. I'm not sure he really wants to castle kingside either because the white king will be so far away from the center there, but it's all about the quick development here instead.
And I'd be wondering if I'm Wesley. Let's say white does move bishop e2. Can black play a little bit copycat, play bishop e7? I understand I've just blundered a pawn on g7, but after rook to g8, now the g2 pawn is also loose, so you could take this h6 pawn as well, and now we're getting into this type of game where does black have that compensation, that C word that nobody likes? Black is down material, but has really active pieces, particularly this rook on g2, the rook on c8 is also looking pretty good, a bishop b4 check at any moment could kick the king out of the center. So is it sufficient compensation? I don't think so. The evaluation bar says that white is better. I would be looking at this and also thinking the same because black's forces, they're not coordinated. They're not as harmonious as you'd like.
And he's reaching for his bishop, or at least he was Magnus Carlsen. He lands it on d3. A bit of an odd choice here, I would say, because it does block the d-file, but maybe he's simply arguing that long-term the bishop has more potential on this square. After all, 2 bishops standing next to each other do control a lot of squares pointing in this direction, just making it maybe slightly more awkward for black to develop on that flank later on. So he is getting ready, Magnus, to castle his king. One thing Wesley could try is to try and trade off knights, but this might not actually help long-term. For example, if we do see a trade, Black's bishop still stuck defending this pawn. Rook takes knight now. Finally, white will get the king castled, and this queenless middle game, as Robert termed it, actually deceptively dangerous for black. This black king still not safe. This black bishop still, tied down to the g7 pawn. Advantage white.
And Wesley's pose right there. He's leaning in, he's moved closer to the board. It's different from the kind of stuff, the body language that we've been seeing from him so far. Definitely more at ease with the mat situation that's on right now. Magnus back in his chair. He's in his territory. He's in his comfort zone. It's an endgame that he can play on forever. He can try to find those small, minute advantage long term. He's feeling comfortable as well. What does this give away about the mat strategy? Because Wesley, again, just coming back to his interview, happy to go to Armageddon. Magnus revealed nothing. He just said, we'll see what happens. The chess that we're seeing right now, what does that tell us?
I think he meant it, that it depended on what Wesley would play. If Wesley played some really solid line where there weren't too many pulls in the position, Magnus said, okay, take a draw, send it to Armageddon. But as David coined it himself, he said, this is like the Berlin of 1d4, but this is like the best possible Berlin from the white side. The position is open. Black has lost the right to castle. There are these open files the white rooks are about to occupy. The dark square bishop for black, stuck at home unless you want to give up a pawn. I wouldn't want to give up a pawn against Magnus Carlsen. And I think this bishop on d3, it just preemptively defends the knight in the center if black had any ideas to move that light square bishop to d5 or something like that. So I think Magnus just controls the board. The dark square bishop for him, once he castles, can also go to d4. And he's staring in both directions in a way that Wesley's pieces aren't. Huge advantage. I see the evaluation bar, it's saying like, I can't read it, but something like 0.5, let's call it half a pawn better for white. This looks, from a practical point of view, much, much better for Magnus. Great winning chances.
Yeah, the white knight better, more active than the black knight. White's two bishops clearly superior to the black bishops. It's these small things that do add up. So not a full pawn advantage. We don't see anything dramatic happening on the board, but the top players, they're very aware. They're kind of zoned into these almost imperceptible advantages, and Magnus feeling comfortable. I have a feeling he's studied this type of position in the past. We talked about styles in previous games. Game 2 that was decided that Wesley won, that was just a mess. Nobody liked that type of position. Both were equally uncomfortable. The previous game suited them both. This one suits Magnus down to a T. He loves grinding out these small advantages. He loves risk-free positions. And Wesley here, he's got a really, really tough task on his hands. That being said, if Wesley does go on to draw this game, he will be feeling it in the Armageddon.
Yeah. But right now, he needs to make a decision. He can't burn too much time on the clock right now. He can't let Magnus break away on the clock the way it's happening right now. Because, again, Magnus isn't going to agree for a quick draw with trading off pieces really quickly. He's going to keep the game going. He's going to keep the options open. So for Wesley to have those extra minutes will be important right now in about, what is that, almost a 4-minute thing after this development of the bishop. And the reason for that is that Wesley has to find a way to find harmony between his pieces, to finish that development, to find the right square for that bishop on f8, which right now finds it impossible to come out because of the pressure on that g7 pawn. The rooks still haven't found a way to come onto the open file. The h8 rook is still out of the game. The knight on d7 is still fine, it's doing its job, but that king on d8, not feeling absolutely safe. It needs to get out of the way. And it just feels like the pieces are coming in its own way. You don't want to step up with the king to e7. And he makes this move, but this move just seems to leave behind a lot of light square weaknesses in Black's camp.
He also could have played this move when he played pawn to h6, so I think Wesley might be regretting his earlier move. The point of h6 earlier was to take away knight g5. This f6 move takes away the g5 square and blunts that dark square bishop on c3. So it kind of was a tempo-losing move, and not just that, it hands all the light squares. Look at the Swiss cheese formation on the king side in Magnus' favor. He castles, very simple move. His rooks will come to the center. But I do think a few turns ago, if we want to just rewind for a moment here, that when he went h6, he could have played pawn to f6, and that would have freed up his dark square bishop earlier, and his king maybe could have run over to the f7 square. I just tucked it away there. I think a missed opportunity from Wesley, and these small mistakes, ones that don't look obvious, it doesn't even look like it was a bad move, these cost you against Magnus Carlsen.
Yeah, I just wanted to highlight the Swiss cheese you mentioned here, Robert. Lots of holes here, and especially on the light squares. But Wesley has found a decent maneuver to try and plug those holes to block them up. King to f7 is something you mentioned in the previous position. Yes, he could have saved a move. Yes, he could have done this all a lot quicker, Wesley So, but if he gets the king to the square, maybe he's holding everything together. Everything would then be protected. The king would be off all of the open lines in the center. And yes, it's kind of not ideal. Yes, he might have made some small slip-ups, but the top players, they're so good at doing this. They admit their mistake. Wesley will have known that he could have saved a move, and he's found the best solution in this tough position.
We were talking about where to place pieces, and Wesley shows the way. The king will slide over to that square. Now that white's bishop is blunt, the dark squared bishop will also find itself in the game. Though still not easy, because that knight on e4 controls a lot of key developing squares for the bishop. Magnus takes a thing, but for me, the first move that'll come to mind is to just slide the rook to the open files in the center. Line it up with the bishop and the king, or perhaps on the d file. But I think it's the follow-up. It's the plan. What do you want to do next? Yes, you can play rook from f1 next to the king, all the way to the open e line. But how does that really help once black steps up with the king?
I think the rooks can go to the open files at any moment, and because the black king is going to f7, a very Magnus-like idea is pushing Harry the h-pawn, and that h-pawn can go up to h4, and then up to even further to h5, and the point is you're taking control of that Swiss cheese formation. Now, I want to land a bishop on g6, because if I get a bishop there, I could get some back rank checkmating ideas. The position for black remains pretty solid. There's maybe a weakness or two in this setup, but for Wesley, he has done all right to just play bishop e7, complete his development. And so some of the advantages for white will be long-term. You see that the evaluation bar prefers white, and I think everyone else who's just looking at the position would too. But I think that Wesley, he's doing a great job. One mistake won't necessarily cost him the game. It may put him on the back foot, but Wesley's a great defender. He's one of the most accurate players in chess history.
Yeah, and such an accurate defense there to play f6 to put the king on f7. I guess if white pushes the pawn, maybe black might consider doing the same. And the only downside for black, this pawn being slightly weak long term, but ultimately Wesley still in decent shape here, and he still has to be the favorite to hold this one. And Magnus, the time is now to try and transform his advantage. We've been talking about all these intangible things, all these small things adding up. He needs to transform it into something more concrete. Whether that's a pawn advantage, whether that's control over some squares or the bishop pair. That's why Magnus has gone into the tank now for over 3 minutes. Feels like it's the first critical moment where it's the first difficult decision for Magnus Carlsen.
And the clock is leveling out as Magnus does make his decision on this move. Does he start advancing the h-pawn, or does he continue with the more standard rooks, bringing them in the center? Meanwhile, black's knight, Wesley's knight, can also jump onto the center of the board at some point, asking questions. But really impressive how Wesley slowed down, but then blitzed out the move, showing that he knows what he's doing. He knows the structure that he wants to go to. I've still got my eyes out on those strange pawns on the king's side for black, that f6, h6. And I just wonder if that, for Magnus, is some sort of a signal and gives him a little bit of a hope of trying to push out in this endgame. Because that's the only non-standard thing that I see about this position. The light squared weaknesses.
Yeah, his antenna is up. He's recognizing that there are problems in black's position, but can he actually capitalize is a completely different one. So we're looking at this position. We want to put up rooks in the open files, but black's setup is actually quite solid. The foundation of it, the bishop on e6, it protects the knight on d7. The king going to f7 also protects the bishop on e6. And as soon as that dark square bishop develops and the rooks are connected and the second rook is brought towards the center, I do think that at that stage, Wesley would be like, all right, I've got this. But until that moment, the Magnus will try to push, and if Wesley can stabilize, as I said earlier, a draw is not the worst thing in the world for Magnus Carlsen. It just sends us to Armageddon.
And we're talking about all these light squared weaknesses as being the only hope in white's position. Can Magnus think about a plan of retreating with that knight to g3 and trying to put that knight on a more active square in black's camp? I'm eyeing f5.
Yeah, I like that maneuver. Sometimes you've got to go back to go forward. So white's knight looks like the pride and joy right now. It's the most advanced piece for white, but oh, he retreats a bishop instead. So similar idea. He's going for some light squares. He's trying to probe a big check potentially in the air if white's bishop lands on the h5 square, hitting the black king. But yeah, somehow pieces, even if they look ideally placed, they need a purpose. They need to be actually threatening, doing something. So these knight retreats, bishop retreats, Magnus, he's hinting at some attacking ideas.
And he wants his rook to do something when it lands on d1. He probably didn't see much happening on the e-file, but if a rook slides the d1, now that the bishop's out of the way, let's say king to f7, just to stop any kind of bishop h5 funny business. After rook d1, now knight d6 check is an idea. Let me get the two bishops advantage, and here it is an advantage for white because you play with a free hand. There are pawns on both sides of the board. It's still an active setup for white. So I think that this was a good call by Magnus. He takes one step backwards with the bishop, but that allows his knight to hop forwards in the ensuing sequence.
Yeah, I love it too, I must admit. And this idea of the bishop check, it's not threatening anything now because this can simply be blocked, but this would loosen up black's structure. And even if it doesn't happen now, Wesley has to watch out for it on the next 5, 6, even 10 moves down the future. It's always nice to have this idea up your sleeve. Your opponent will burn 5 seconds, every move, calculating it, working it out, and just watch out for it to become a bigger factor later in the game. Suddenly, when he least suspects it, Wesley so might have to face this type of check. But first of all, the most natural move looks like occupying the d-file. I'm saying this rook, maybe the other rook as well. This would, at some point, allow black to potentially grab a pawn, but not right now because the black bishop tied down to this knight. So Magnus maybe choosing which rook. That's always the question I struggle with most in chess. Which rook to plant on an open file? Looks like you have a choice of 2. And it's just about where the remaining rook would want to end up later on.
Really interesting concept by Magnus to fall back with the bishop and eventually finding a way to create an imbalance in the position. If white is able to trade the knight with the bishop, then we're talking about a game. Then we're talking about a long-term edge already. But to me, it's surprising that Magnus took a long thing for the bishop to fall down. But now, again, he goes into the think, and it could be about deciding which rook. But that's a big burn on the clock, the last 2 moves.
There's no risk in the position, but we are seeing some hesitation from Magnus. And if the times were reversed, then Wesley would be feeling very nervous about his chances. But with Wesley playing moves quickly and strong moves at that, Magnus is maybe looking at this like, do I actually have much of anything here? Can I press forward for the win? I think putting a rook on the d-file makes the most sense. It's in line with what he just did, bishop e2 retreating. So I would play rook to d1 and then try to get the 2 bishops advantage. Whether you can win that position is a whole nother story. Wesley so a brilliant defender, but Magnus, just take his pluses where they come.
Yeah, feels like he's overthinking Magnus Carlsen, maybe a bit frustrated that he doesn't see anything direct. In the end, he, pushes a pawn. So he really wants to fight this game, really wants some advantage, Magnus Carlsen, because this is a bit weakening white's pawn move. Suddenly, white's king is vulnerable. Suddenly, you leave a bunch of squares unprotected in your own camp. But he's trying to step forward, destabilizing black's light squared bishop. And watch out, that black king on light squares. If white gets the pawn 1 square forward to f5, big threats appear. So, okay, the evaluation bar doesn't react. It's not a bad move. It's not kind of a winning move either. But it is asking questions of Wesley. He's just trying to pose practical problems here.
Love that move. And I didn't see it. I wouldn't have played it. I didn't suggest it. But that move is trying to push forward to f5 so that you really control all of the light squares. And if black tries to stop that at once with, say, the move g6, just to cover the square, instead of putting a pawn on the square, now I think the knight can even go back to g3 at any moment. I'm going to play f5 myself, and I'm shattering your pawn structure on the king side. So we talk about small pluses. This suddenly becomes a pretty important plus for white, that if black would be forced to get rid of the g-pawn for white's f-pawn, 2 isolated pawns remaining in the position for black, completely unideal.
And another pawn decision that you never want to make to stop this idea of f5 is to go f5 yourself to fix the pawn on that square, because then that bishop on c3 becomes such a strong piece. You can give a check on h5. g6 is impossible anymore. The rook is hanging on h8 and forcing black to go back to g8, making sure that that rook on h8 is stuck. Fall back with the knight, and now suddenly again black's playing without most of his army.
Yeah, pretty much the most important piece here for black to activate is that rook, and now it's never getting out. White could just land a bishop on g6, and black is pretty much stalemated on the king side for the rest of the game. So this would be a disaster for Wesley So, meaning that his 2 most natural moves are not feasible right now. Look at Wesley So staring up at the ceiling, looking for inspiration, because suddenly realizing f5 has a flaw in it. That would be a nasty check. g6 also just too loose, too weakening. So you have to allow the white pawn forward, but that's far from ideal. That's suddenly a bit scary. Wesley So maybe didn't see that one coming. We didn't here in the studio. That is a mark of genius from Magnus Carlsen. That's why he's so strong in these queenless type of positions. He's still looking for resources, still looking for threats.
Putting a rook on the d-file was just so natural. And for Magnus, he was spending that time there not because he was thinking of which rook to move. He's thrusting that pawn forward, and he is posing some direct problems. I thought this wouldn't be a direct battle. I thought there would be no confrontation here. And Wesley, you look at him peering at the board. He's like, I need to buckle down right now. I'm actually trailing on the clock. I spent 2.5 minutes on this turn, and suddenly it's Magnus once again with a lead on time and with a better position.
I mean, I just want to take this moment to think about the last 2 moves by Magnus. Rook sliding onto d1, rook sliding onto e1, the most natural-looking moves in the position, moves that you make in seconds. First, Magnus retreats with that bishop, making everyone think that eventually he will slide in with the rook, go in with the knight, and then he pushes this f2 pawn to f4. Again, Magnus just doing Magnus things in endgame, creating magic out of nowhere, out of a place where you'd feel it never exists, forcing Wesley to take some big decisions right now, at least putting him under pressure to solve these problems. Wesley develops with a check, but in the bargain, he gives up a bishop pair. And David, I see your expression. You do not like Wesley's last move.
I do have a bias towards the bishop pair, especially in an open position like this, but it feels like Wesley's just giving Magnus a helping hand. We were talking about White having to take 2-3 moves to set up, ideas of jumping in with the white knight, nabbing the bishop pair. Wesley's just giving it for free to Magnus Carlsen right now. And yes, the black rook is active. Yes, the black rook actually covers the 5th rank, stopping White's pawn from landing on f5, stopping any checks. But what's left on the board? It's not about what's off the board, it's what's left. And White's 2 bishops have great potential. Black's knight doesn't have any stable squares to sit on, cannot really compete right now with the bishops. Long term as well, I think this is just going to favour White. There might be no immediate knockout, but long term now, Wesley is going to be suffering.
And Wesley down to nearly 3 minutes at this stage. And maybe he can try to improve his knight, jump out to b6. He does just that. But at any moment, that dark square bishop for White, which has no counterpart, can slide forward to d4, take that knight if it ever becomes a problem. And that f5 pawn push that we thought might occur, it could happen at any moment. So for Wesley, he's kind of holding on to key squares, but you could see his pieces getting dislodged, and then Magnus will be able to press forward.
Yeah, once again, bishop e2, f4, I think these are exactly the kind of moves that makes Magnus Carlsen the best player in the world, or the best player in the world in general, but the greatest of all times when it comes to endgames. And we see that bishop has landed on d4, putting pressure on that rook. Wesley immediately slides it to a5, so provoking Magnus to make some pawn decisions on the queen side, a3, but that rook on a5, to me, it looks misplaced. You have to be sure that, you've gone all the way there, but you better be able to find a way back.
Yeah, Black's rook could just be feeling silly on that square, especially if it later gets kicked around even further by White's pawns, White's bishops. Wesley, so a bit of a shake of the head. He looks away from the board. Remember, in one of the previous games, he was doing this all the time, and then he won. So let's not trust Wesley's body language too much, but I think internally he is a bit upset that this position is spiraling slightly out of control. It's definitely Magnus trying to make things happen, dictating the pace of this game. And I don't know if Magnus will even react to these pawn pushes. White can start improving pieces as well.
But Magnus is down to 2 minutes, 30 seconds, and the clock is ticking. So if he does not find the energetic reply... Speaking of energetic replies, he gives up the a2 pawn on the spot. I think he smells blood right now. And if Wesley takes this pawn with his rook, that bishop is going to go all the way up to the h5 square with check. He's going to push his pawn to f5. He's just using his pieces, his pawns, his battering rams. He doesn't care about that pawn on a2.
And look at Wesley right now, exhaling violently there. He cannot take that pawn. If Black takes that pawn with his rook, he loses the game. It is poisoned right now. He has to try and coordinate his pieces yet again, keep the black rook on the 5th rank. The black rook has too many things to guard. He has to re-centralize it, but it's just come from that side of the board. It's so hard psychologically to correct your own mistake, to lose a move for free, essentially. He has to bring the black rook back to the center.
But he has to lose the move. He could be losing on the spot if he went pawn hunting. He puts the rook back on d5, and Wesley realizes what a mistake he made on that last move, sliding the rook to the edge of the board. Now the bishop can step in with tempo to f3, further pursuing that black rook. And if White is able to get control of the d file, be the winner of that open d line, that would make Wesley's endgame play even more difficult. Bishop h5 will always be a threat. You start with bishop f3 and ask bigger questions to the rook.
The rook is going to be kicked about, and it's going to have to step back towards the black camp. And for Magnus, sometimes you push pawns and you regret it because they become loose or overextended. Here, you're happy to get those pawns forward. Whoa! Wesley has rook to b5, and the engine's going through the roof. That was another blunder.
The rook is just trapped on this square. Magnus can close a cage around this rook. I think the most natural move in the position as well. White's dark squared bishop just slides into c5, cutting off the rook's access to the 5th rank. It's caught in a cage on its own, trapped by a bishop and pawn, and that rook will fall off the board.
Magnus could wrap up match victory and the Champions Chess Tour final, and he finds it. The black rook on b5 is trapped. He had to fight against the threats of a4. He steps in with the knight to try and grab that bishop on c5. But now that check on h5 that we were earlier alluding to, that's a square that isn't defended anymore. Bishop h5, f5 are these ideas that are possible right now.
You could go for that. You could just drop the bishop back to e2 and say, give me your rook, because he didn't sacrifice the rook. He got his rook trapped, and he's going to regret it. So he's trying to give up his rook for the dark square bishop, maybe get a pawn in return. But I think that for Wesley So here, he is hoping that some tactics will work out in his favor with a knight c3 jump, things of that nature. I don't actually believe that it should pan out. And Magnus now, he's about to retreat the bishop.
And he's so indecisive. And then he finally plays bishop to e2. Now, under a minute, he goes for material, and Wesley, jumping in to pick up the other bishop, has to give a check because the knight would have taken the bishop. There was a skewer on c4.
Yeah, and now jumping out the way with a check has meant that the white bishop, for now, is out of the eye line of the black knight. White's rook can save itself by gaining time against black's knight. Wesley, he's trying to hold things together with tactics, but they don't work. We see the evaluation bar. It's through the roof. Magnus Carlsen will win. If he finds this move, he hits the black knight. No good squares for this knight. If it moves, white can save his bishop. Magnus Carlsen now should be winning. The bishop jumps in. This is skewer on the white rooks.
So many pieces are under attack, the bishop on h5 as well. But I think you could throw in a check, bring your rook forward in the position. But many loose pieces. He does deliver that check. And Wesley's king goes forward rather than back. You didn't want to have your king in the last rank. There would have been a skewer. Can Magnus bring his rook back with another check, and he's up in exchange.
Yeah, the other white rook will save itself. I think we might be seeing the last few moves of the 2023 Champions Chess Tour. Magnus Carlsen will save his remaining rook on f1, swing it across. Black's knight, black's bishop are skewered. Any moment now, we need to see both players. We might see a handshake.
And we see Magnus, he continues. The knight and the rook are lined up. Magnus under 20 seconds, but it's going to be enough. Wesley, is he about to give up?
It's hopeless. Nothing to do. Look at the black pieces. One of them will drop off, and he's trying one or two final tricks here, Wesley So. But look at this. Both pieces forked.
That's
it. That's it. Magnus Carlsen does it. We have a winner. It is him. It was always going to be him. Magnus Carlsen, the undisputed king of speed chess, wins the Champions Chess Tour Finals.
And you hear Wesley say something towards Magnus.
94, it's
slightly
90 something.
He's asking him about the theory.
That's the tempo.
Yeah, they were discussing their opening. It's all about the chess for these guys, but relief on Magnus Carlsen's face. We saw it. Suddenly a smile, and he deserves every moment. Handshake there from Judith, our arbiter. He is the champion. But Wesley So, he put up a great fight.
Lots of credit to Wesley, but that's a $200,000 smile if you're Magnus Carlsen, because you just made bank. You take first place, you get all the congratulations in the world, and also a cool $200K.
Magnus Carlsen wins his third title of the Champions Chess Tour, and he can't hide that smile. It is time for him to celebrate, and what a run he had in the round robin, finishing second at the top with Wesley, taking down the world number 2 in the semifinals after a big fight. And the finals, it was a Magnus Carlsen show.
Magnus Carlsen yesterday got that one win that he needed. The other games were drawn. Today, he won the first one, suffered defeat in game 2. So Wesley So, he came out slugging, but in that fourth and final game, he played an opening that Wesley did not know fully. And you heard Wesley ask after the game, what should I have done there? Magnus had the answers. Wesley did not.
That game 4, Magnus starting slow, trades of the queens. And then finally does Magnus things in the endgame, grinds it down, and these are the final moments of the Champions Chess Tour. Coming in from Toronto. And we see Toronto celebrates Magnus Carlsen's win. What a performance. And game 4, David, he gets the job done.
Magnus Carlsen, he got the job done. He grinded it out like a grandmaster, in the end winning this queenless middle game in great style thanks to the power of the two bishops. And I just want to show where Wesley So eventually went wrong. It's a really difficult position for black. This rook under heavy fire. It's been kicked around the board already for a few moves, but it found itself trapped on a poor square. Wesley should have retreated this rook back to either d7 or d8, back to safety, any safe square along the d-line, but instead he brought it to a square. It was caught in the net. Magnus closed the cage here, and suddenly it must have dawned on Wesley that this rook is simply going to fall victim to either the white bishop or even the white pawn in certain variations. He tried his best to muddy the waters, Wesley So, with a knight jump, but after a hit on the black rook, it was forced to give up its life, and after this knight fork, the white bishop was able to save itself. Bishop to h5 check, a series of really nice counter-attacking moves by Magnus Carlsen, a series of accurate moves. First, jumping out the way, forcing a block. Next, hitting the black knight. If the knight moves, the white bishop saves itself, Magnus being up a rook for a knight right now. But this skewer allowed Magnus to show off the real trick. First a check, and then another check. And finally, the other rook, which was asleep for so long, skewers these two pieces. One final move, the knight dropping back, hitting white's rook, allowed a simple drop back. The pieces are forked. White emerges with a decisive material advantage. Wesley So had to resign.
And that one move in the opening really cost Wesley because that rook in the corner, it never moved for black. So for Wesley So, he did not know the opening. We heard him ask Magnus about it. And for Magnus, what a game that was. B4, sacrificing a pawn, understanding the black king wasn't fully safe either, precisely because that rook in the corner couldn't get out. So Magnus, he understood the dynamics of the position. He was able to not just trap that rook, but after that, the ensuing complications, he had figured it all out. Gave a couple checks, skewered some pieces, won the game on the spot.
And against the world number one, sometimes one move is enough to lose it all. And that's what Magnus just showed. One inaccuracy by Wesley, creating those light square weaknesses. And that just gave Magnus enough to outplay in that endgame with precision. And he gets his hat-trick title in the Champions Chess Tour. Only Magnus Carlsen can do what he hasn't done before. David, this guy is unstoppable.
He's unstoppable. We hear from his fellow players how much admiration they have for him, Magnus. And it's just because he has this universal style. He can play any position, any opponent, adapt his game. He's been at the top of world chess now for so long, and that's not coincidence. He's so clever in every type of position. And yes, he's got a bunch of rivals. Yes, the new generation's coming up, but Magnus, for now, is still the king.
And sometimes people get tired of the same person winning over and over again. Magnus Carlsen literally doesn't care. He's going to keep winning if he plays his best chess until somebody dethrones him. He dethroned himself by not continuing the World Championship title. He didn't care about that. He's won the Champions Chess Tour title 3 years in a row. Congratulations are also in order to Wesley So, as well as the other competitors. They gave it their all. But Magnus Carlsen, once again, ends up on top.
The greatest of all time strikes again and is the winner of the Champions Chess Tour. And with that, well, it's time for us in the Oslo studio. We've had a blast calling the action, but now it's time to go into celebrations in Toronto. Kaya is with the winner and everyone else. Take it away.
Yeah, thank you, Tania, David, Robert, and everyone in the Oslo studio. Thank you so much to all of you. We love you. It is now time for the trophy ceremony here in Toronto. To my right, two of the main men behind the Champions Chess Tour season 2023. It's Eric and Danny. Danny, you've been here the whole week. Your passion for chess has been so visible. How will you sum up this week?
Oh, wow. Summing up this week has been a roller coaster, but it feels like it was meant to be. Like it's been a long time coming to try to build on the amazing Champions Chess Tour that started as, I guess, the Magnus Tour, then the Champions Chess Tour, and then obviously everything that has been happening in online chess over the last few years. It's just been incredible. But it never felt like we had not just the two best guys, the 8 best players, really getting everyone together to see it all come down to this. I feel like it delivered, and it just felt like a dream come true.
Eric, you come here the last couple of days. You must be a proud CEO right now.
I am. I'm proud of our team, everybody here who's done this, everyone who's been involved in the Champions Tour for so long, and of course, of the players and all the competitors. I could not be happier.
And
Yeah,
I want
go
to
ahead,
clarify
Danny.
real quick. These are not for us. These are for the players. So Wesley, if you'll still go on a date with me, those are for you right there.
Wow, you're so
But I just wanted people to know we were not holding those flowers for us. I felt awkward and wanted to give them away. I'm sorry.
Yeah, feels more natural with the flowers over here. Yeah. Eric, I was going to ask you because I know in ChessCom, it's all about go chess, grow chess.
Yeah.
What is the future now?
This is just the beginning for chess. I mean, we've seen a couple of different waves of chess, but the biggest waves are yet to come. And we are going to see, the game is going to grow, the community is going to grow, and we're going to see bigger and better events. And thanks to all the players who are putting themselves out there for the fans. And this is just the start.
Yeah. And Danny, what will you say about our two finalists here this week?
What can you say? I mean, you're looking at, I think, the two best rapid players on the planet, not taking anything away from the fact that there were so many amazing chess players here. And I just lost my sound, but I think it's been incredible. I'm so appreciative to not just the chess played, but just who you guys are and how you interact with the fans. And I think that, like Eric said, I think the best is yet to come. But it's because we have players like this to build around, and I'm just impressed and a fan and excited about the future.
100%. And Wesley, you are the runner-up. You've given it an incredible fight here. So much entertainment. Congratulations on second place in the Champions Chess Tour 2023.
Yeah, thank you so much. I just want to congratulate Magnus for a well-deserved performance. So a big applause.
I will join in on that. Yeah. And applause to you as well, Wesley. What has this experience here in Toronto been like?
Yeah, it's been wonderful. Obviously, I had a great result last year. Also, this year was really good. I couldn't ask for anything better. The people are really friendly and really nice here, and everyone's been so nice. I'd like to thank the fans, also the sponsors, and also the chess.com community. All the staff has been very, very, really good people. Michael, thank you. I mean, thank you so much for everything. Also, Danny and Eric, also all the staff here. So, really wonderful.
Thank you, Wesley. And, well, as I said, you gave it an incredible fight. You won one incredible game today as well. But Magnus here, he takes it a third time, the Champions Chess Tour. What will it take to knock this guy off the throne?
You need to ask him, yeah?
Yeah.
You need to ask him.
Yeah. Well, I will ask Magnus later on because right now, you guys, it is time for the official trophy presentation. I'm going to hand it over to your commissioner, Michael Brancato.
Thank you, Kaya. This has been the most thrilling week of chess I could have possibly imagined. To all the fans watching from home, from their local chess club, or from our fans here in Toronto, thank you for your enthusiasm and your support. Magnus, you've done it time and time again against the absolute best players in the world, and you defended your title here at the 2023 Champions Chess Tour Finals. Congratulations.
Oh, all right.
That is a very cool trophy. Congratulations, Magnus. What do you think?
It looks good. Is there a digital version as well, or is it?
There is an NFT version of
Yes.
this one as well. That is correct.
But I get to take this one, right?
You get to take the physical one home. Magnus, third consecutive Champions Chess Tour title, just incredible. What has this season been like? What's been the highlight for you?
I think the highlight certainly has been this tournament. It's been so much fun. The format, I think, has worked out great, bringing excitement till the very end. Also, yeah, it's good to be here in a good environment with basically all the best players. And I mean, personally, I'm very, very happy with the way the event ended, the very last game, because it sort of, for me, it sort of comes full circle. Because when we had the first Champions Chess Tour event in 2020, I think that was when I turned 30, and I lost to Wesley in the final. That's exactly when sort of this line in the Queen's Gambit that Wesley played today was, I mean, I wouldn't say it was invented. It was a little bit known, but Wesley was kind of the one who introduced it and made it just very difficult to play d4 at all. Like, it's the Berlin of versus d4. So to actually like win a game, like decide the tour by winning a game against Wesley in that line, that's really comes full circle for me.
Oh, that's fantastic. Because I was thinking full circle would be 1b3, the one goal you had left here in the CCT 2023. So will that happen?
I prepared hard for it. I really thought Magnus gonna play it today.
Yeah. Well, does that mean we're going to see that next season? You have another goal you need to tick off next season, Magnus.
Yeah, or probably I should think more before I write down my goals.
Good point. Well, Magnus, this is the third consecutive one. I promised Wesley I would ask you, what will it take to knock you off the throne?
I think several people have been close, and I did lose a couple of matches this season as well, or more than a couple. So I'm still pretty good. So I still win some of the time, but I don't win all the time. So it's not going to be easy anytime soon. Yeah. I don't think so.
Yeah, he's not going to make it easy, this guy. He is your 2023 Champions Chess Tour champion. To all the players, to all our fans, a big thank you for following us this season. There will be a next season of the Champions Chess Tour, so the excitement continues in a few months, you guys. But for now, what an excitement we've had here in Toronto. It's been such a cool week, and we hope you guys have enjoyed it. Enjoyed our top players giving it their very best. What a fun week it's been. We're going to celebrate Magnus Carlsen here now and the runner-up Wesley. So a big thank you to everyone for following. We'll see you again. Bye from Toronto.
B3.
For the second day in a row, Magnus pauses.
Gives a check, comes back with the rook. There's panic, and Magnus picks up another pawn.
No time, Wesley So. He made that move with 1 second left.
He gives up. Wesley So resigns.
Put it back there. F2.
Oh,
no, he missed it. Wesley So wins the game. What a comeback.
Magnus Carlsen does it. We have a winner. It is him. It was always going to be him. Magnus Carlsen, the undisputed king of speed chess.